Hi, welcome back, guys. This is your friend, the DN WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku's second year unleashed new powers. The recommended playback speed for this video is 1.25x. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details, and go to the story link to say hi to the author. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now, let's get into the fanfic. It was a normal day in Mustafa City. People were walking down the streets. Clear the way, grab all you can, boys, nice, got a fat wallet here. And villains rampaging through the streets. This time it was the Cider Gang. A troublesome pack of pickpockets and thieves. A few heroes were trying to catch them, but none had any real ways to enhance their mobility. That, or they were getting washed away by the seltzer water wave the leader made. All right, we'll get clear and meet back, Gumph. The leader started before a fist met his face. Within a few seconds, each member of the gang was struck. Some with kicks, others with punches. Yeah. Well, this is trouble on my way to school. Wonder if this was what it was like for All Might. A villain shakes out of his stupor and pain to take a shot at the hero who attacked them. But said hero reflexively dodges and then takes up into the air, floating just above the thieves. It's Midoriya Izuku, or the symbol of hope. Kibu as his hero name, though not quite as most remembered from his appearance at the sports festival or in other appearances. He'd grown about 3 inches in height and breadth of body, and his hair was a bit shorter compared to the usual fluffy mess it usually was. But something that was very different was the pair of sport sunglasses he was wearing, as well as the confident smirk he had directed at the villains. "Cocky bastard, take this," a villain said before taking aim again. He didn't get his shot though, as Izuku was instantly in front of the villain in a crouching position. "Yellowstone smash," he shouted with a powerful uppercut kick to the chin. This sends the villain straight up for quite a ways. A few other members of the gang try to flee, but Kibu won't let them. "Quick snare," he called out before unleashing a number of tendrils and black whips, wrapping up a few of the villain's legs, before pulling them up and leaving them hanging. "Screw this, we're getting out of here," the recently awakened leader said before creating his cider wave again. His remaining crew started riding the wave to get away. But Kibu wouldn't make it that easy for them. He quickly sped over and put a hand in the mass of seltzer water. Izuku reached out and could feel all the molecules within. "Cold snap," he called out before rapidly cooling the wave of water, freezing a number of villains and disabling the leader's quirk. Ha. Seriously? Now we get shown up by some teen hero on the street. A hero who just caught up with the Cider Gang. He was led by Death Arms, who was a bit miffed that a teen had done their job for them, did respect what he had done. "Good work, Kibu, right? Man, you true metas can do a lot." Izuku smiled a bit awkwardly before rubbing the back of his neck. "That should be all of them," he said before admitting he had to get to UA for the new year. "Not all of them, Izuku. You missed one," a voice called out from an alley. Walking up to the group was a different well-known name. But while Izuku was known for being one of the first truly noted true meta heroes, she was known for doing something most thought impossible: being a hero without a quirk. Kendo Itsuka walked up while dragging a very battered and bruised villain, one who also seemed to have some cuts on his clothes, while being restrained in a special device. Itsuka had been born with a quirk, but an incident had caused her to lose it. Despite all of this, even most people telling her to quit or give up on being a hero because it was gone, she refused to do that. Persevering and learning multiple ways to fight, from the use of gadgets and martial arts to something most believed didn't exist, Kai. She used these skills plus a newfound greater ability to comprehend the world to show that a hero wasn't defined by something as limiting as a quirk, or even a true meta power. It was something you could earn all your own. Right. Thanks you too. We'll take it from here. Rock Lock said with a nod to Itsuka. She returned it while rubbing her hair a bit. It wasn't as long as it used to be. She had cut it a few months prior, closer to a pixie-style look, after a very devastating set of incidents and events at Yua. How long has it been? She thought aloud while walking towards Yua with Izuku. Izuku looked back to her before sighing and saying, 2-3 months. Maybe. Didn't even really finish out the second semester. The two they were talking about was a mutual friend and trainer of theirs. Though a bit more than a friend for Itsuka. John Jotaro Dmitri Svoboda. A strange hero who had shown them many ways that a hero could awaken. And the true meta who had shown Izuku the greater potential he had. I'm still mad about it. But I guess. He didn't leave without some reason. And he trusted me enough with this. Itsuka said while looking at the ring on her hand. While she and Izuku flashed back to that day they awoke in early December. Flashback. Itsuka groaned a bit as she shook a few cobwebs and aches out of her body. Only to look around and be shocked where she was and who she was with. Namely because it looked like she was in a house floating in space. Not too strange for the other occupant of the bed though. Sleeping next to her, just as naked as she was Sahara Saphantite Anwar. A genie with somewhat phenomenal cosmic powers, and a longtime partner of Svoboda's in more than one way. And the one who had helped create the space the pair was floating in. Wow. What a night. Though I guess it's a fitting celebration after we got back from hell. Itsuka said as Saphantite was stirring from her sleep. The genie girl popped her neck a bit before wondering where John was. Maybe he's making breakfast, Itsuka proposed. Sahara, though, had a different suspicion. Not just because she couldn't smell anything cooking. She spotted a pair of letters on a nearby nightstand. She poofed a robe for herself and Itsuka before going over to check them. Quickly opening it, and as she read it her eyes filled with some tears. Itsuka was afraid when she saw this, but steeled herself to read what her boyfriend had written. Only to be surprised by something else with the letter. A ring. But not just any ring. That's my ring. The one I was bound to. Sahara said with confusion and sadness in her voice. Itsuka was shocked by this and asked what it meant. Maybe he's asking you to take care of me, or that I should take care of you. Itsuka checked the letter John had written and saw what brought Sahara to tears. I'm sorry, Itsuka, but I can't stay here. It's not something I, or anyone else did. I have to leave. As I am, I can't really help you more than I have. And besides that, there's no way the League or Forgotten will just sit on their laurels after what they did to Yua. Let alone what they took from me, she read aloud while her hands trembled a bit. The two rushed out of the secret space to go and talk with Nezu. He'd be one of the only ones who might know something, Sahara said after snapping her fingers and making their clothes appear. But once in a common room, they were stopped by Izuku, who had a letter himself and questions to ask as well. Safi, what's going on? I just found this note from Jotaro, he said with some worry. The two heroines were wide-eyed again and hurried over to see what Jotaro had written Izuku. Itsuka, though, noted something strange when they surprised the boy. She noticed a strange card fall from the envelope. Saf. No, Sahara. What do you make of this? Itsuka asked, while looking over the strange card. One that had a massive tower on it. The genie girl gasped before rapidly taking the card from Itsuka. I think this is why he left. She explained what the Tower Tarot card represented. Chaos, destruction, anarchy. Basically all of the things John has been fighting against since he was in control of his powers. And I can feel the magic off this. Asmodeus must have given it to him. You sure they didn't lie? They are demons after all? Izuku asked before reading over the letter. and feeling frustrated and a bit angry at what his true meta mentor had written, saying, "You are capable, Izuku, but you aren't at the level you could really help me. Even if you mastered everything you can do, you don't have what it takes to do what I need to do." Izuku grit his teeth before crumpling the parchment and asking Sahara what they could do to find him. Well, flashback end. I was a bit surprised she suggested that we let him be. I thought she would want to find him more than we did, Izuku admitted while thinking on the matter from a few months prior. Itsuka sighed before saying, "She knows him better than we do after all. I still can't believe he left me her ring." Itsuka's musings were disrupted by a cloud of smoke surrounding her and Izuku. She quickly made a kai blade with her hand and took her stance, only to feel like a fool as it was just Sahara appearing before the pair. Her blue skin seemed to shimmer slightly, and her raven locks were far longer than they had been. But her hair was slightly obscured by the light hijab she wore on her way back to the dorms. "Oh, hey there, sorry for startling you," Sahara said with a tired look in her eyes. "Pulled an all-nighter, didn't you?" Izuku said with a raised eyebrow. Sahara blushed before admitting to that. "Principal Nezu wanted me to write him up something of a class plan, since he wants me advising any students on how to use magic." Before Izuku or Itsuka could ask any details, the former was jumped on from behind by someone special. One of his girlfriends, Uraraka Ochako. "Hey Izuku, I haven't seen you in a while. Why didn't you tell me you were back?" Ochako started happy before pouting a bit. She looked much as she had before, but did seem a bit taller and had more defined muscle mass, thanks to a workout plan that Izuku and All Might had worked out for her. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck before admitting he took some time for special training. "John and Sahara taught me some survival stuff, so I practiced that and some of my other abilities this last month. If the freezing of that cider wave was anything to go by, you've definitely improved when it comes to cooling things, and probably heating them up too," Itsuka said with a punch to the green-haired teen's shoulder. He reciprocated it and noted she seemed a bit brutal when taking down the thief he missed. Itsuka cleared her throat and tried to deflect it, namely by asking what new devices Izuku's other girlfriend had made. "He collapsible nets and straitjackets work great, but I could use some subtler tools," the martial artist admitted. "Ask me yourself. Though you'll have to come to the development studio to do it," a new voice said from their left. Melissa Shield walked up in her own UA uniform before adjusting the glasses that only slightly obscured her blue eyes. Her blonde hair was a bit shorter to make it easier to put on her armored helmets, but hidden beneath her uniform was an equally impressive musculature. All Might, not wanting his niece to be in too much danger without her armor, had started working out with her almost daily, sticking with a plan to create refined, lean muscles. She didn't have a quirk or true meta abilities, but thanks to him she had enough strength to easily bend pipes. "I think I will. While I like those gadget gloves of yours, I noticed that they kept getting damaged if I put too much kai into them. Maybe we can find a way to work around it," Itsuka said before pulling Melissa along. The rest of the teens chuckled a bit before making their way to Ua High School. "Still crazy to think how far I've come. But I'm still growing. And I won't stop," Izuku thinks as he walks through the gates to begin his second year of hero school. "If you keep reminiscing, we'll leave you behind, Kibu," Melissa called out as Izuku had stopped and was just looking up at the building. He cleared his throat before saying he was coming. "Wherever you are, pal, we'll be waiting for you to get back. Though we'll probably be your senpai by then," he thought before meeting at the Tua classroom. Once through the door, he was greeted by his classmates, some calling him class rep, president, or just his name. "So where have you been, man? Yeah, haven't seen or heard about you for a while. Copying your mentor, as it were." "That's enough of that, you three. Miss Midnight should be arriving soon. She is one of the main second-year hero teachers." This was said by one of the two vice reps for Izuku's class, Ida Tenya. He had been chopping his hands while speaking, but it didn't keep his words from carrying weight as Kirishima Ojiro, Kaminari Denki, and Minoru Mainta went back to their seats. Izuku thanks his vice before asking how his break was, only to regret it a second later as Ida started in on a long spiel about training and working with his family, including his brother who worked to build up Tenya's speed. Though it's still nothing compared to Mr. Ten. You'd swear he could almost move at light speed. He may be able to eventually. We don't know much about true metas after all. The one saying this was the second vice rep of the class, Yaoyorozu Momo. She had her hair in her usual wild ponytail, and still carried an air of elegance about her. Ochako, meanwhile, met up with Asui Tsuyu and Jiro Kyoka to talk about some of their own side studies and other things they did over the break. Hey wait, has anyone seen Mina? Tsuyu asked after realizing that the pink girl of 1 now 2 wasn't in class yet, which was a problem as midnight had arrived and was telling the students to take their seats. Now then, Ashido's late A. Not the best impression for the new year. I'll make sure to punish her later, Tilda. Midnight said in a way that made the teens shiver. That might not turn out the way you think, ma'am. After all, I'm the one who's turned some of the other punishments you've wanted to use against you, Tilda, said missing pink girl notes as she fades into the classroom. The last big adventure of her class lead to some very strange things. Least of which being, Mina was no longer just a person with a quirk. In her case, one that produced acid. No thanks to the machinations of the villains, she and a number of students had been caught in an incident that changed many of them. Some lost their quirks, others were turned into monsters with little reason. But in her case, she was turned into a half-demon. The demon in this case being a succubus, which gave her new abilities to work with. But not without some spurts of issues. Her once thin squared horns were now larger and demon-like. Her skin tone used to just be more of a light pink or magenta shade. Now though, she was like a pinkish red, and her normally pink hair had some changes. It was longer, and she had streaks of black and gold in it. Ha! I suppose it's not too surprising that you are a bit more rebellious or troublesome. But don't keep cutting it this close, Ashido. And would you please button up your front? You are distracting your classmates. Midnight's statement wasn't wrong. Thanks to her new body and state of being, Mina had gone through some other varied changes. Least of which was that her breasts were now larger than Momo's, almost on par with Midnight's herself. And she felt the urge to flaunt it a bit more by unbuttoning her top 2 buttons. And a few of her classmates could see a bit of her bra. Let alone that she still had a tight waist and wider hips, thanks to the succubus within. She's starting to look like an old-school Joru girl, Izuku thought before chuckling a bit at the matter. Mostly because the reaction of his classmates was a bit exaggerated in some cases. Mina, come on, take your seat. I'm sure Midnight wants to get on with class and talk to us about what is next for us. The pink girl shakes her head a bit to refocus and agreed. But not before winking at Izuku to see what reaction she got. He doesn't flinch though and tips down the glasses he was wearing before giving her a look of his own. With that done, he puts away the glasses and settles in to hear Midnight welcoming each of them to their second year as heroes of UA. So if this all seems strange, part of that is due to this being a time skip and the like after the events of Justice Across Space and Time. Based on the rough idea for a Japanese school year, and when most culture festivals take place, the whole Hellbound arc would have happened in late November, early December, with Jotaro or John taking off about a week before Christmas. From there, I went with an idea that he would spend a few months trying to find what big danger could be unleashed, assuming it might be related to all the energy stolen from him. Along the way also meeting various heroes and growing stronger. The other side is me wanting to not have all of the crazy stuff happening within the first year of high school for these kids. I'm not blaming Horikoshi, I blame his editors. So, we get Izuku and the rest refining their abilities over 3 months. And now they'll get a new challenge for what will be the second movie. Please review and check out the original story to fill in some blanks. Time for the students to get more accustomed to what it means to be a hero in this odd world of theirs. And to do that, they'll have to run an agency of their own. But outside factors will be at play for making this far more difficult. So on with the show. Tamura Poff. Just a bit more, and this paperwork will be done. Man. If I'd known I'd have to do all of this writing and meetings, I'd never have suggested to Sasaku to go out and recruit. Or get more businesses. Then again, she's managed to do some pretty impressive things out there, I think aloud. But my thoughts are interrupted by a buzzing at my desk in the massive office I recently upgraded to. What? I asked tersely. I may have mellowed a bit, but I still do hate basically everything. Excuse me, Shindo-sama. There is a call for you. It's a restricted number though. Shall I put them through? I hum at this before telling the man to put them on. Shindo. What happened to you taking up the master's name? Ah, Garaki. That explains a few things. It's nothing much. Just took a page out of Sasaku's book too. Sensei may have loved the whole hide in the shadows as an intimidating force. But there is something empowering about running this company and having people bow to me. That isn't your purpose or role, Garaki shouts. And now he's started on a whole tangent about becoming Sensei's successor and becoming the true Demon King. Blah, blah, blah. Are you listening to me? Not really, no. Look. Sensei's way of doing things worked for his time. But there is something to be said for subtlety. I've already done some minor damage to various heroes in a few regions. Both their reputation as well as where to send the others of the league to eliminate heroes. And that just starts another stupid lecture. Great. All right, let's cut to the chase. What the hell do you want? I finally ask after hearing the old doctor rant. He lets out an angry grunt before asking for help moving something. An alternate, if you will. Despite believing that you would be the optimal candidate to inherit his mantle, the master believed that it would be prudent to test others. I've just finished one. Mostly, I need him moved and let him test his new abilities. I roll my eyes at this and ask where the person he needed moved was. But not before making a special request. You took samples of each of the members of the Love, right? I want one. Or rather, I'd like you to give us some of the research on a certain quirk factor. Garaki likely has a puzzled look, but I keep it simple at noting I wanted the data on Muscular's quirk. Not only that, I know you've done some work with that hospital of yours for Tartarus. There's one from the fallen Shai Hisaki, Rappa, I think. If you've got data on him, I'd like it as well. What could you do with it? It's not as though you could give it to anyone else. I smirk before noting that we had other ways to make use of it. But we still needed a place to start from. We move your lab rat. You give us copies of the data. With the terms given, Garaki lets out a frustrated sigh before accepting. He grumbled a bit, but he finally acquiesced. Hey Wu, call Dabai, compress, and twice. Psych Link as well. I know. She's mostly an informant. An acquaintance asked for some help, and I got some info that could help with that project idea you had. No Pav. Dabai looked around as rain started to fall. Let's get moving. No telling how long before we have company. Twice yells that he was hurrying, and then said that he was taking a break. I thought Wu fixed most of the problems in that guy's head. The dark-haired flame user looked up at the muscular telepathic woman Celine Sakamoto or Psych Link before shrugging. He did. But it's apparently only when he's not wearing the mask. And he said he can't get into his groove if he's not wearing it. Twice takes the wheel and tells the pair to strap in. But not before removing most of his mask. I can't drive well when I'm wearing it after all. Dabai looks at him funny before asking where he learned to drive. Before I became a villain, I worked at a moving company. Had to drive the trucks a few times. Though never anything this big. Said truck was one that looked like it belonged with the military. But inside was Dr. Garaki's latest attempt at a new symbol of evil. In a vat of liquid floated a young man that held a possible potential to master what the former symbol of evil was capable of. Okay, just a bit further and, yeah, I didn't think it would be that easy either. Twice says before noticing a number of cars coming up behind them. Psych Link checks her mirror as they move down the highway and acknowledged she couldn't mess with their heads fast enough to make this work. Then we don't slow down or stop. Gun it. Dabai exclaimed and twice complied. Right as Rock Lock and a hero called Changun. He turned his hand into said weapon, but twice wouldn't make it that easy. He used the mass of the truck to try and crush the hero's car. Rock Lock pulls back in time, but the car on the other side is less lucky. Namely because they got in Psych Link's field of view. Now I can make a mess, she said before using her true meta powers to mess with both heroes' minds. By having one use his quirk to badly injure the hero in the backseat, and then forcing the other to crash into a third car, resulting in a fiery explosion. Damn it, Changun shouted before using his quirk on the back of the truck. No effect, unless we get closer, Rock Lock says before speeding up. The other heroes follow suit and try to do some damage. Dabai then pokes his head out and unleashes a torrent of his flames to disrupt the heroes. Any chance you could do something about them? Psych Link groans before saying, hey Sho, I still can't believe I'm helping you. I'm a part-timer. But anyway, I can't unless I get a look at them. I can roughly sense their minds, but I can't do much more than give them a headache without seeing them. Guess true meta powers come with their own stipulations. They don't have many rules though. Twice says while keeping the truck as steady as possible. Rock Lock and Changun were forced out thanks to Dabai's flames. But Electric Hero Shocklash stepped up to attack the front of the truck, while her sidekick drove. Take this, she called out before making arcs of electricity in her hands. But Twice increases his speed and crashes into the car, making it and the heroes go careening. Though they were saved thanks to a special ally. As the car started to roll and Shocklash was about to hit the ground, a stretchy blue body appeared. Nabasu had arrived and cushioned their impacts. Damn, that could have gone better, he said as he vaguely saw Hoshino Kazuhiko or Airwaves, as he was calling himself, jetting above him. Persistent, isn't he? Compress said before tossing some explosives toward Kazuhiko. But the boy goes intangible and easily catches up with a truck. I'm not letting you get away easily, he shouts while taking aim with his cannon. Dabai snarls before unleashing a fire blast at the young hero. But he stays intangible and rapidly blasts Dabai in the face multiple times. After enough hit home, he bounces back and then down into the truck, which reduces the burning villain to a mass of goo. Psych Link snorts before saying, damn it, guess I'll have to take care of him. She waits for her moment to look out and look Kazuhiko in the eyes. The resulting psychic shock messes with Kazuhiko enough that he is struck by Compress's attack. Good work, but we've got bigger problems, Twice says before saying to look ahead. In the middle of the highway was Endeavor and a few of his sidekicks. Jet burn, he shouted before unleashing a powerful fire punch, almost reminiscent of All Might, John, and Izuku. But right as he was punching, Psych Link messed with a neuron in his arm and made the powerful flame attack shoot upward. Or rather, she made his arm point upward to change the trajectory. But while she was dealing with this, the telepath was trying to dig deeper into Endeavor's head. Crap. He's got a lot of willpower. I don't know if I can take full control, but I might be able to make this work for us. Endeavor increased his heat and prepared to unleash his strongest attack. It may not have worked against that boy, but this thing is nothing compared to him, he thought before shouting, prominence burn, and a massive torrent of flame rushed towards the truck. But it didn't just go there. Psych-Link, or rather her clone, managed to mess with Endeavor enough to where his flames spread out along the sides of the highway, starting a small forest fire. While she and the other clones were reduced to in the wake of the attack, the heroes were more distracted cleaning up and stopping the spread of the fire. All except for two. That being Endeavor and Hawks. You could have helped us and your team, Endeavor berated, noting that Airwaves and Nobasu had barely been able to save some of the heroes in the cars while in pursuit. Man, those guys are good. Kazu especially. Kids faster than me, Hawks said with a rolling of his neck. Don't change the subject. They had a member of the Forgotten with them, right? I felt something when I tried to attack. Hawks jokes about his missed attacks before noting that it was Psych-Link. She doesn't pop up often, but when she does, she makes some serious trouble, Hawks said before noting the goo from Twice's quirk. What was in here? Endeavor questioned before checking the back of the truck. And they found an impressive high-tech life support pod. Were they transporting some new kind of Namu? Hawks wondered. Endeavor, though, was curious on why they made a move now. It's been months since we've seen or heard anything about the League of Villains or the Forgotten. After that attack on Ui, they've been keeping quiet. Maybe that was intentional. It made a lot of folks complacent. We haven't had a challenge like them for a while. And now they're on the move since we weren't expecting it, Hawks noted. Endeavor sighed before worrying about Shoto and the rest as they started their second year. Justice is Mia from what Nezu tells us. Shoto may have been able to refine his fire and ice, but I don't want to think about what might happen. Hopefully Midoriya and the rest won't be targeted. While he was thinking this, the person who was in the life pod was walking towards some vehicle lights at a slow pace. He was wearing a strange suit with sections upright from the back. Sure took your time meeting back up with us, Nine. What's with the dead weight? A big human said while Nine was catching his breath. It was worth it. The experiment was a success, Nine says before looking back at the city and the deceased hero in his hand with disdain. You're not gonna make some big speech, right? 'Cause I'd be pissed if I got out of jail to listen to that. Nine looked back and glared at the person who said that behind his comrades. The one who stepped up was a young man with red eyes and a shaved head. He used to have blue hair, but he shaved it after spending a number of months in prison. Who are you? What's your quirk? Are you on my level? Nine asked with barely concealed annoyance. The young man smiled and said, I don't have a quirk. Don't need something that makes me weaker like you. Nine's eyes flashed and said, Then you are worthless. He lifted his hand, fired a few lasers from his fingertips, only for the shots to pass right through the villain. Nine's surprise was blatant, but before he could react, the other villain appeared right in front of him in a flash of black mist. He cocked an eyebrow at Nine before disappearing, and then surrounding Nine with a variety of blades and spikes made of dark matter. Didn't expect a true meta, did you? Blackout says from a blade next to Nine's neck. Take it easy, man. He is the general boss here. A new figure steps up and addresses the squabbling duo, this being a woman with brown hair and eyes. She was a bit heftier compared to Nine's old ally, the red-headed woman Slice, not to mention shorter. Blackout sighed before retracting himself from around Nine. So who are you? Nine asked with some confusion. She sighed before pointing at him. And then with a whistle, she created a laser just like you would. Call me Bright Nova. I can use sound to create light blasts or illusions. Now can we get out of here? The Villainous said before walking to a truck. They've got their own reasons for wanting to break apart the world, but they definitely are strong. True metas can't be underestimated, the large villain known as Chimera said before gesturing to the trucks. Nine let out a somewhat annoyed grunt before getting in the truck, hoping to find more quirks to complement the one he was now implanted with. At UA, the students were getting new details from their teachers on a special class assignment for them. You'll be stationed on Nabu Island for the Hero Recommendation Work Project, Midnight said with a smile before bringing up the image of the landmass in question, as well as the reason that they would be sent there. Given the former hero protecting the island had retired. While most of the teens were happy about this, Sahara had a disgruntled look on her face. If the island is so peaceful, why do they need heroes? Seems kind of overkill. This stops a few of her classmates, and they look at her funny. All except Izuku, who has an idea on what she was talking about. You're getting at the fact that heroes, even student ones, should be called in for serious emergencies, right? He asked with a slight frown. The genie girl nods and notes that they shouldn't be acting in place of the police or rescue workers. What I'm used to is that heroes will step in or be ready in case of a serious event. And I'm not just talking like a villain plotting or attacking. Natural disasters, maybe an outbreak. For just day-to-day matters, it just seems like too much. Midnight nods before letting out a breath. You may be right, at least in your world. There you have less superhuman abilities, even just very niche or minimal ones. And thus a hero is needed when there is real trouble or an emergency. But we have our own set of reasons. The R-rated hero notes that with All Might's retirement and the incident a few months back with the love and forgotten attacking UA itself had seriously rocked the trust the public had in heroes. The HPSC is wanting to get you students as much possible experience with the general work that comes with being a hero. At least in our world. Though it might be a big shock for you. Dr. Anwar Tilda. Sahara blushes at that and asks that she not call her that. Midnight gets serious and says, "You will all be on your own out there." Well within reason wink at Sahara. No pros or teachers to back you up. You'll have to make all your own decisions, and how you work will reflect how the public perceives you as heroes. Am I clear? Yes, ma'am. Most of the students announce, while still having excited looks on their faces. Izuku frowned a bit as he thought about what Sahara had said. I didn't consider things like this given what I and everyone else had grown up with. Heroes just being listed in phone books. Always on call to help even with menial matters. But is that right? Or is it just something we've gotten? Izuku? Hey, wake up, Ochako says, while waving her hand in front of his face. Izuku shook his head and looked around. I was mumbling, wasn't I? He asks sheepishly. Ochako smiles a bit before noting he wasn't talking aloud. But you did look like you were miles away. What were you thinking about? The green-haired teen widened his eyes a bit before shaking his head. It's nothing. Just considering all this assignment will entail. Miss Midnight? Can we hire some people to help us at the agency too? Within reason, I suppose. I don't think you can hire the locals though, the heroine said with a befuddled look. Izuku shook his head before saying, No, not them. I was thinking on bringing in a support engineer. Melissa does have experience, and she is a hero in her own right. And you'd like to have your girlfriend along, Minta said from the side, jealousy wafting off him in waves. Izuku blushed and said that wasn't it. Besides, technically, I'd still have a girlfriend on this, he said with a gesture to Ochako, who shrugged and agreed. Minta seemed to have a bit of blood coming from his eyes, but it quickly shifted back to normal tears. Jealous as I am, I don't disagree that she and her gear would be a big help. Plus the armor is hot with the way it hugs her curves. While slightly annoyed at the way the short, though a bit taller than the previous year teen had put it, Izuku didn't disagree with him. Neither did Ochako, as her eyes were slightly glazed over while remembering how she wore its compressed forms. And the various functions the blonde inventor had added for fun times. Midnight shivered while thinking about the scintillating trio under the sheets. But she moved past that and said it would be fine. You should turn in the paperwork for it though. Not to mention asking the girl herself. Ochako and Izuku nod before hurrying off to talk with Nezu and Melissa. Sahara, meanwhile, had a flat look on her face at hearing the word paperwork. Definitely one of the reasons John and I disagree with heroes being public this way. Revealing secret identities aside, making superheroes civil servants kind of kills the reason for being a hero. Momo hummed before asking if that had to do with her history in research and engineering. Something like that. I always hated having to turn in reports to the government. John wasn't much better, but they gave him a better reason than me. His was to note dangerous trails and areas. I think a third of the time they just wanted to ogle me. She looked back at Minta with a slight warning glare. He put a hand over his chest and signaled that he wasn't looking. I don't want to get turned into a rat or get punted to the moon. Kota, Sato, and a few others noted that they were going to get some things for their trip. Sahara, though, chose to head back to the dorms and pack up some of the gear she wanted to bring, meeting up with Itsuka along the way. So, we're heading to Nabu Island for this silly exercise. What about you? Itsuka raised an eyebrow at the way the genie phrased her opinion, but moved past to say, we're heading to Hokkaido. Koraya City is relatively peaceful, so most of the heroes moved out. Sahara groaned again before asking if Itsuka could help her. They make their way to the genie girl's room and open a special portal. One to a space that the two other world heroes made to relax. Still can't get over how crazy this place is, let alone all the stuff you two have in here, Itsuka said while staring up at the space-like sky, and then down to the same void around the walkways. Sahara shrugged and started packing a few items for the trip to Nabu. Why does that name make me think of something? She questioned while packing up a special generator. Or she was until Itsuka stopped her. Once the main pieces were gathered and ready to be moved, the pair of girls headed back to the portal and the real world. That should do it. Though I still think I could take my prototype generator. It would be fine. Itsuka gives her a flat look before saying, isn't thinking like that what got you in your current state? Sahara grunts before clearing her throat and muttering a moving on. Hey Sahara, you got a package. Actually, it looks like two of them. Not sure what they are though, Kirishima said while walking in with Mina and her familiar Luno. Though the little hellhound was not happy since they were on a leash. Really? Is there a note or anything? Sahara asked before accepting the packages. Kirishima shrugged and said he didn't see one. The genie opened the box and saw that there were two other boxes inside, as well as a card. But what was surprising was that the two boxes had her and Itsuka's names on them. Huh? What's this about? Itsuka asked as she took the box in question. They both opened theirs and saw each had pendants within. Sahara's was a dagger-like silver piece, with an aquamarine set within the blade of what would be the dagger, and an opal in the hilt. Itsuka's box, meanwhile, had a pendant with the kanji for Tori on it, with sapphires and tourmaline set in some of the sections, while the gems and silver seemed to sparkle and attract the eyes of everyone as they were coming back. Sahara noticed something. The pieces are imperfect, not to mention the gems, so that's it. She smiles before saying, even when who knows where in the world, fighting who knows what villains or anything like that, he still finds time to make these and remember my birthday. Itsuka looks at Sahara funny before asking what she meant. John made these from the stones, crushing them with his fists before using some energy to cut them, to forming the silver and making these for us. Everyone was shocked hearing this and were curious what the card said. Sahara opened it to read. Sorry I missed this and Christmas you too. I wish I had a better excuse than I needed to find what our friends down below warned me about. I know it won't make it right, but I hope these will be something you both like and love. Uebuka. Wasara Kariba. Both girls tear up a bit before calling him a jerk or idiot. How do you put up with him, Sahara? Itsuka asked while rubbing her eyes. Sahara just smiles and says, he keeps me grounded at times. even when he does things like this. While both would like to wear or keep their new accessories, they know there won't be much need for them. Besides, I don't want to break them in case something goes wrong. Itsuka notes while putting hers in a special hiding spot in her room, smiling at it before packing up to go to Koraya City. I'll probably do a few chapters showing Class 1B2. Not just because I want to give them all more spotlight, but I have made Itsuka into a major character in all of this. So, she has to have her moment to show what kind of a hero she is. Not to mention a few others will take their chance to show what they've learned. From all facets. Also, if the whole jewelry thing seemed odd, it's more something I've done for girlfriends in the past. Got them pieces of jewelry from my various adventures. Anyway, please review. Time to help Nobu and get a look at the setup for Class 1A in their new position as the pro heroes of the island and what they'll be doing. Also, we'll get a look at Mina. I did mention that she's gone a bit more rebellious Jaru after becoming a half-demon. So on with the show. No puff. After a bit of packing, all of the students were ready to head to Nabu Island. This will be our chance to show what the next generation of heroes can do, Ida says enthusiastically. A number of his classmates agree and cheer with him. But there were others who were less excited. Sahara being a major one. It feels so wrong. Maybe this is a lot of why he left too. There was a reason we didn't get too involved in the day-to-day matters, she thinks with a frustrated sigh. Izuku, while liking the idea of being acknowledged as a pro-hero and helping people, felt an odd amount of disgust or distaste for the way they would be operating. Guess this has something to do with all Joda-John had been talking about. Being a hero isn't a job, it's a call. A call to action to save and help. Not a day job. That makes more sense for their world. Though I can't disagree, I've been seeing more of the darker sides to it myself, Midori. Mina said while walking up with Luno on her shoulder. She let out a slight sigh and thought about some of what she'd witnessed before her second year. Namely the greater greed and other negative aspects that she could now perceive with her demon senses. While not fully telepathic or a direct victim in any way, her half-demon state gave her something akin to empathetic perception, letting her see the sides that many heroes hid. They definitely aren't all bad. But so many. They are just doing this for a shallow reason. Jotaro, no wait John. Anyway, him, Midori, Sahara, Itsuka, Ochako, Ojiro, Tetsu and Kiri. They know why they do this. They struggle inside, but they'll step up when needed. Some I've seen only do that when there are people obviously watching. Mina's thoughts had become more jaded and frustrated as she got more acquainted with her demon side and abilities. Especially when she went home for a time and dealt with people eyeing her up because of her appearance and succubus assets. Many far worse than Minta could ever be. But that wasn't the only thing that had her on edge. Over her time studying magic with Sahara, Luno, and a few other demons, she'd practiced some various types of niche magic. One she tried recently was tarot readings. She decided to do some for those who she felt especially close to. For Izuku, she pulled the card of the sun, and Melissa was the star when she read for her. Temperance was what she found Itsuka to be, and Ochako was strength. For herself, she pulled 2 cards without trying to. The devil and a reversed lovers. Like I don't have enough problems with demons and devils, she thought aloud. What was that? Ochako asked as they were heading to the ship for Nabu. Mina cleared her throat before passing it off as nothing. But a different set of cards did worry her. When she pulled a card for John, it came out as a reversed justice, which was again ironic. Sahara, meanwhile, was represented by the Empress, which worried Mina for a number of reasons. But the last card she drew was what made her uneasy for the work recommendation project. She subtly summoned her deck once more as they were boarding the ship, crossing her fingers as she reached for the top card of the shuffled deck. Please no whammies. Please not that, she muttered silently as she grabbed the card. She flipped it over and her heart dropped. She had drawn the tower. This was the third time that she had pulled the card when doing these readings. And given what she now knew of magic as well as what had pulled John away, well, let's just say she was even more afraid of what could come. Though her fears were slightly abated when they arrived on the island itself. "Oh, it's so good to see so many young heroes," the mayor of the town said when he greeted them at the harbor. He had a big smile on his tanned face and came up to shake Ida's hand, assuming he was the leader of the class. "Ahem. No, sir. I am one of the vice presidents of Class 1A. Midoriya here is the one who is the leader of Class 1A, he said before gently pushing Izuku forward, who cleared his throat before offering a hand towards the mayor. "Pleasure to meet you, sir. I'm the symbol of hope, Kibu. We'll be glad to help you and the rest of the residents however we can." Sahara scoffed a bit, while the mayor apologized and acknowledged Izuku. "I heard about you with the sports festival. Is it true you don't have a quirk?" he asked with some confusion. Izuku slid past that before noting that they need to see the location of their agency. "If we're going to be helping people, then we need to know where to go and see how it's set up," Izuku said with a nod to the leader of the island. "Of course. I apologize. The local officer will show you to the building." He gestures to said person, and they quickly guide the students to the buses and have them brought to the former hero office. "It might need a bit of cleaning, but it should be fine. Luckily, you won't have much to worry about here. We haven't had a villain attack in over 30 years. Momo takes the moment to thank the officer before gathering up a few of her fellow students to clean the building and make sure all the facilities were up and running. Izuku told Ida to take a few into the town so they could get ingredients for cooking, while his group would do some basic hero work around the immediate area. Melissa, meanwhile, set up her own lab and rough development studio in a back room. "It's not as advanced as anything at a hero school, but I can make this work," she said as she brought out some equipment from one of her packages. Namely, a fully functioning costume crafter and adjustment station, multiple mechanical marvels and tables that would let her work on her own suit, as well as the gear that each of the quirked heroes had, an easily collapsible monitoring and scanner station, and a variety of equipment for chemical analysis and work. "You really sure you'll need all of that?" Suyu asked after shaking out of shock of seeing how Melissa modified a backroom. The inventor hero shrugged and said, "Probably not. But it never hurts to have it and not need it." The rest of the teens finished setting up the office, and the word was put out that the UA Hero Agency was open and ready to assist, though some were less enthusiastic about it compared to others. One of the first major jobs taken up by the teens was acting as lifeguards at the main beach of the island. Shoji sat atop the tower and extending his tentacles to listen and watch for trouble. "Asui, there's a kid caught in a riptide," he called out over the waterproof radio. "I'm on it," the frog girl announced before hoping, and then swimming off to find the kid in trouble, catching the boy with her tongue and holding him aloft. Sato then used his quirk with the drawbacks lessened, thanks to some of Izuku's suggestions on what sweets could help in the right moment, and rapidly rowed out to pick the boy up from Asui. The scared kid was set down in the rowboat, while Sato caught his breath and the drawbacks faded. "Hey kiddo, you okay?" he asked with a slightly strained face. The kid sniffled a bit before saying, "Thanks, mister. I'm okay, but you don't look good." Sato let out a little laugh and admitted he was better. "Just need to relax a bit. Though you've been brave. Here." Sato shook off a bit more of the mental drain before offering a cookie from one of his pouches. He then started to row back to shore to find the kid's parents. "That might have gone worse a few months ago," Asui noted while floating near the boat. She made her way back to shore while also keeping an eye out for others who went too far. Back on land wasn't easy either. Ojiro and Minta were currently patrolling near the beach houses and shops for creeps and others who were harassing people. with Minta stopping the troublemakers in their tracks, and Ojiro would knock them back with his quirk. "Why is it that they only see you?" Minta exclaimed after they dealt with a third group of troublemakers. Ojiro blushed and said, "I don't know, maybe. It's just my height. Though you've grown a bit." Minta pouted before hearing a woman screaming. The two nodded and rushed off. Minta arriving first to see some guy being painfully pushy to a few women. "Don't think so, jerk. Grape rush," he shouted before rapidly tossing his orbs out to restrain the jerk. "The hell? My buds will take care of you," he called out, and suddenly Minta was jumped by a group of drunk idiots. "I don't think so. Flame tail tornado and burst palms," Ojiro announced before spinning and unleashing a burning set of blows, followed up by a barrage of palm strikes with a fiery touch. One man, though, wouldn't go down easy. "I think he's got a stamina quirk. Keep him distracted. We don't need to hurt them, really," Minta said to the tailed teen, who nodded and used his flare shot kicks and tail swipes to disorient the troublemaker and leave him open for Minta to restrain. "Thank you. I guess they were more drunk than we expected. But you were both great heroes," one of the women said to Ojiro. And while Minta was annoyed by this again, he was surprised by the pat on his head. "You did great too, little guy." The short hero tears up a bit at hearing this and thanks the woman as they continue their patrol. "I think it works better when you don't try to posture, pal," Ojiro says with a raised eyebrow, noting that had failed the purple teen more than once. Takoyami, meanwhile, was working with Sahara on noting the off-limits section of the beach, with Dark Shadow talking to the civilians while Sahara wove a web of magic that spelled it out to them. Though some thought she was another tourist given she was in her costume, though her harem pants replaced by swim briefs. "Now then, I'd like a volunteer to show what happens if you go past this point," she said with a bit of flair. A woman steps forward and Sahara gestures to the field. Once the woman crosses the threshold, an alert goes off and a screen shows the woman's name, age, and address. "If you don't follow the rules, we will find you for a fine, Tilda," Sahara says with a wink, before snapping and erasing the screen. She apologizes to the woman before passing her a voucher for some good food. "As thanks for being a willing assistant," she says with a wink. Shoto, though, is less impressed and says, "We didn't come here to put on a show, guys." "Hey Shoto, think you could whip me up some more ice?" an older man operating a shaved ice stand asks. The bi-colored teen shrugs and makes a small pillar for the man. "That enough?" he asked bluntly, and the man was happy to accept. Overlooking the beach were a pair of children, one more starry-eyed than the other. Back at the office, other calls were coming in about troubles around the island, with Momo being more of a receptionist and dispatcher for the agency. Mina had been doing it at first, but she asked to swap with someone else. I keep hearing things I don't want to hear," she said before excusing herself. Luno, in the meantime, stepped up and helped Momo. "What's going on with Ashido?" she thought aloud after sending Kaminari to West District to charge a battery. Again. "Why can't the old man buy a new one already?" he groused as he was heading out. Luno looked down before saying, "It's a problem with her nature. She's having some trouble adjusting to some of the new powers she has as a demon." Momo blushed before admitting that she hadn't meant to say that aloud. The hellhound chuckled before Mina just needed time. But time wasn't something she was going to get. Not with other odd requests coming in. From Koda finding lost pets to other calls for assistance. Namely, a missing child case that Izuku was happy to take. "At least it's a bit more of a real emergency," he noted with some frustration. "Funny. I'd probably love this if I hadn't met John and Sahara. But now, it does feel kind of excessive to have heroes doing work most could take care of by asking a friend or neighbor." Kirishima offered to go, but Izuku stopped him. "Your quirk isn't the best for this," he said while putting his sunglasses on. Ojiro stood up and noted she had Izuku's back. Hey Izuku? Maybe you could take Mina too. She's been practicing locator spells. Might be good training. Ochako said while looking out to the girl standing by the door. She wasn't smoking, but it almost seemed like she wanted to light up from the look on her face. Izuku smiled and said he would. Mina, come on. We've got a kid to find in the shopping center. Izuku said with a hand on her shoulder. The pink girl looked up at him with a frown, but it shifted to a mix of smile and a wince. Mainly because thanks to her empathy reading, Izuku seemed like a radiant light that was just full of compassion. Great. Now I'm almost waxing poetic. Wait, how do I know that word? As Mina was thinking this, Izuku jostled her slightly to make sure she was all right. Though they had to move out of the way as Ida rocketed to help an old lady who threw her back out. Sure, Midori. I can come along, she said before asking how they would get there. Izuku smiled before asking both girls to trust him. He creates a set of kinetic tendrils and black whips to wrap around them before taking off into the air, flying above at a decent pace. Don't want to make them sick or cause damage by going too fast, after all, Izuku thinks as he flies above the roads, houses, and trees. Once they got to the rough area, the call came from Ojiro, and Mina got to work with their powers. Or in Mina's case, she started a locator spell based on the boy's appearance. Meanwhile, Aoyama and Ochako worked together to clear a road after a rock slide. Ojiro and Minta continued their patrols, and the rest got called in to help with other various tasks to help the residents of Nabu Island. I think I've got him, Mina announced after a few minutes of scanning. Looks like an old playground area of some kind. Ojiro, think you can make sure? The pink girl asked. Ojiro was happy to oblige once they were close, and confirmed the sounds of a scared, nervous kid in the area. Izuku went off first and found the boy near a slide. Hey there. Is your name Katsuma? Izuku asked with a relaxed smile. The boy named Shimano Katsuma blushed at seeing the hero. But before either could speak up, a new person jumped in. What took you so long? From the slide, a little girl came down and started berating Izuku, noting it took him 30 minutes to find Katsuma. Aha, so it's like that. You wanted to get an idea of how good we actually were. So you called it in that you lost your brother while keeping an eye on him and timing us. Am I right? The girl who introduced herself as Maharu blushed at Izuku picking apart her plan before pouting and acknowledging the truth. So what took you so long? She demanded in trying to get back some leverage. That's a bit of my fault. I was trying out something new, and it took longer than I thought, Mina says while walking up with Ojiro. This threw Maharu off again and asked what it was that Mina was testing out. Oh, just this, she says before creating a spell circle and casting it before her, showing a map of the island and various people on it. This shuts the little girl up again as she has no idea what she was looking at. I guess it's not too surprising you don't know about magic, Mina said with a titter. Katsuma meanwhile was wide-eyed at hearing that. Magic is real, he asked happily while trying to touch the magic field. Easy, kid. Yeah, it's real. We do have a genie in our class after all, Ojiro noted with a smirk. Nah, that's just a girl with a weird illusion quirk, right? Maharu says while trying to get back some stance to berate the heroes. But Mina denies it again before admitting she wasn't entirely human either. But you don't get to know what I am, Tilda, she said with a smirk and a wink. Maharu keeps pouting before grabbing Katsuma's arm and running off. What's her deal? Ojiro asked in confusion. Izuku sighs before saying, She doesn't trust heroes, just like Kauta used to. The other two heroes with him looked back and forth for a moment before asking if he was planning to talk to the girl. But Izuku shakes his head before saying, talking wouldn't do much. I can only show her what a hero is when the time is right. Mina has an idea of what he meant, but Ojiro is confused. Let's head back. We may have more work to do. Izuku said with a smile. After this and a number of smaller jobs, the teens were exhausted. We've gone plus ultra for sure. Any chance we can take smaller jobs? Kaminari asked while reclining at his station. Izuku checks the numbers with Ida and Momo before admitting they couldn't do that. At least not if we want to keep their trust. Right now our focus has to be getting to know the people here, he said while sipping on some cola. Well said, Midoriya. We need to prove ourselves while acting as their heroes here, Ida noted while finishing some reports. Momo then notes that it was all good practice and training for when they do this full-time as pro heroes. Izuku also notes that even if the area was peaceful, it never hurt to get to know who you were protecting. That was what he did. Even if it was often by pretending to be something he wasn't, or just walking around in the day-to-day. Talking about Jotaro or Justice or John again. You'd think you were his boyfriend, man. Not that I don't get the respect you've got for him, Minta said with a teasing smirk. Izuku rolled his eyes before there was a knock at the entrance to the agency. It was the islanders who were bringing food and drinks as thanks for all of the teens helping around the island. Though Ida felt his classmates should show some restraint at the impressive spread before them. Hey, has anyone seen Melissa? Izuku asked before the locals left. Ochako noted that she had been in her workshop the whole day. The mayor was curious about the girl and asked to see what she had been working on. Izuku knocked on the door and was greeted by a slightly disheveled Melissa. Oh hey Kibu. What's going on? She said while rubbing her eyes. We were about to have dinner, and the people from the island came to thank us, Izuku said. Oh, sorry about that. I was working on finishing something for everyone. Hold on. I'll bring them out to show you, Melissa said before turning back to her lab. The mayor looked inside and whistled. I didn't know the previous hero had all of this. He didn't. This is all Melissa's equipment. She brought her own lab to support and fight with us, Ochako said as the inventor girl was bringing a box out. The mayor was surprised, as were a few of the other locals. But they were curious about the 20th member of 1A. Melissa opened the box to show some very small and lightweight earpieces for all of them. These should be comfortable for all of you. With these, we can give those on patrol directions and new jobs on the fly, rather than waiting for calls, which would especially be useful in an area with weak service. One of the islanders noted that the inner areas did have spotty service, and sometimes their main tower didn't work perfectly. Have I seen you somewhere before, miss? A woman asked while looking at Melissa funny. That's when a different local recognizes her as Melissa Shield. Incredible. To think you have one of the best in the support industry here. How did you manage that? The mayor asked while shaking his head. Melissa decided to show them some details herself and used a new feature she'd been working on for her armor. She pulled out her phone and the pieces flew to her. The shining suit still had the major colors of red, white, and yellow, as well as the blue-green hue that she took from Izuku and All Might. The islanders were shocked and asked why she looked like the hero who helped with the cruise ship rescue. Because she was a hero there, and still is, Toru says with a thumbs up at Melissa. But she doesn't have a quirk, so how can she be a hero? One person asked. Izuku tightened his fist at this, but took a breath before saying a result, because it's not the powers or quirks that make a hero. It's the work and courage they have to step up and face what make them and others afraid. The inspiring way Izuku said this silenced any possible dissent, and all of them looked at him with a measure of hope for the future. Outside, he and his vices accepted more thanks from the locals before they headed home. With Ida and Momo blushing at the praise and thanks, Izuku was more reserved. But he smiled and had a light pink dusting of his cheeks at what the civilians had said. And that dusting grew into a happy blush as he tasted the delicious food that the locals had cooked for them all. Hey Melissa, do you mind taking the night watch? Toru asked while a group were heading for the baths. Wait. What? Why me? She asked with some confusion. Mina chuckled before saying, because you stayed in the office all day. Yeah, you were working on gear for us, but still. Melissa blushed at this and acquiesced on the matter. Izuku and Ochako offered to stay up with her for the time being, though it ended up being some more training as Izuku wanted to practice a few kicks and movements outside the building before bathing. Ochako followed suit and practiced with Melissa on the best ways to throw punches or counterattacks. While he was practicing now, Izuku was reflecting on not just the quirk he'd originally gained from All Might, the power of one for all and all that came with it, but also his untapped potential that only awakened thanks to a little nudge from justice. They both entrusted me with something great, and I have to make it my own. Same for all the powers the rest of the previous holders' abilities. Izuku thinks before using his tendrils and black whips to lift some delicate objects. But this doesn't go as well as he breaks a number of them. Damn it. Still putting too much force in. You need to relax, Izuku. You're way too tense. Both in trying to use that one power on breakables, and in trying to push herself. Ochako says before gently wrapping him in a hug from behind. Izuku melts into her embrace a bit while letting out a breath and thanks Ochako. He thinks to himself on how he can handle about 30% of the maximum power currently. He can push the output to about 40 in small bursts like his Delaware Air Force smashes. But I spend a lot of time not focusing on that and trying to make the most of my kinetic powers and its variations. But even that, I didn't try to figure out how a lot of it works, like my healing factor. I just focused on trying to pull kinetic energy from my cooling and heating powers so I could use smokescreen, let alone practicing with float and my kinetic flight. Before his mind could once again go into a spiral, Ochako kissed his neck and told him he needed to relax a bit. This island would be perfect for it. I know you're the technical head of the office and everything, but you need some time to not worry about being a hero. She's right, Kibu. You could use a break as badly as I can, Melissa said with a worried but compassionate look in her eyes. Izuku sighed before thanking them both. I'll take a bath and get some sleep, he says while taking both of their hands. But just as they were going inside, Katsuma arrived and called out to them. There's a villain, he said in a panic. All three heroes' eyes went wide before asking where they were. Melissa calling her armor once more before passing Izuku and Ochako their support gear. For Izuku, armored bracers based on the full gauntlets and a design from Hatsune. One that let him focus his Air Force flicks better and would compensate if he went over his limit. Ochako's meanwhile took inspiration from Izuku's tendrils with grappling hooks in her wrist sections, as well as a new device inspired by something Justice had done for her long ago. All right. Show or tell us where the villain is, Katsuma, Izuku said, while tightening his fists for the fight to come. While Melissa's armor locked into place and powered up the diagnostics and Ochako put on another headpiece to compensate for the disorientation brought on by her quirk. They were ready to go. Tad cliché, I know. But I wanted to show how the students would handle a few minor changes. I hope the things with Mina don't seem too out there. I thought it would be fitting that she has to deal with. Well, not exactly crap, but I think it would drain on anyone to know a person's darker emotions, let alone being a half-demon. So I've had her go a bit more Jaru leg warmers, no tights, etc. for the school uniform, and she's a bit surlier in her day-to-day. And yes, there will be far more shake-ups to the story of Heroes Rising. Just need to get there and set up how all of the fight elements will go. Please review. Nothing much to say about what will happen next. Just need to edit around a few other details with the fights, especially for Melissa and Ochako. So on with the show. No Pav. Back at Tamura's penthouse, he was talking over what happened with the cargo Garaki had asked his team to move. The heroes didn't get the cargo, right? He asked while looking to Twice or Jin as he was currently. Now, after Endeavor Flame blasted the truck, The systems within started doing some emergency activation for the pod. Who or whatever was in it, they didn't get their hands on it, Jin said while drinking a beer. Dabai meanwhile grumbles at how his copy was easily beaten by the heroes. Not your fault they brought in a few of those true meta heroes, and we can't underestimate them, Magni says with a shrug. She also noted that there was a group moving south who were taking out heroes. The flame villain perked up a bit at this, while Toga questioned if that was related to the cargo. That would be my guess, Wu said while walking into the living room. He was fiddling with a pair of devices that had to do with the research they got from Garaki. And now they were ready to test. Magni, sir or ma'am, whatever you call yourself. Come here for a moment, the villainous inventor says with a wave of his hand. The magnetism user snarls, but puts up with it after a look from Tamura. Wu nods before asking Magni to try the belt he was working on. The big-lipped woman looked at Wu funny, but shrugged and did as she was asked, only to find her strength completely sapped when it powered up. What? What did you do? She demanded. Just a test run of a new device to sell to a few folks, and could be a potent weapon. Just in case. Huh. A power dampener? That's new. Most don't have something like that, Tamura notes while narrowing his eyes at the limp form of Magni. Wu shakes his head before saying, it's not a dampener. Still working on that. This is a strength sapper. It basically nullifies the muscle capability of the wearer. Twice questioned how he was able to make the belt, and if it worked on other things, before rambling about wanting to get pumped up. Well, you are in luck, my friend. I've made an inverse to it as well, Wu says before handing the other belt to Twice. He put the belt on, and instantly had a physique on par with Endeavor or All Might. Now it doesn't grant you anywhere near the level of strength of All Might. But for general thugs or henchmen, we could put many of them on the level of those with strength-boosting quirks alone. And the best part, there's no drawbacks, so far anyway. Tamura hums in intrigue at the device, while some of the others seem to view it as an insult. Namely because it would give anyone a quirk with no worries or struggles. Let's not worry about that. Wu is right that this could be useful. But it's a bit obvious and could have complications. See if you can shrink it or something, he said before calling the meeting. He hummed and wondered if this could be a benefit for down the road. Both the gear and the fact that the creature his crew escorted could be disabling or defeating heroes. But while he was looking forward to what would come, others were panicking in various ways. Bad enough we lost a handful of heroes attacking the League, and that other person. Now there's a group who have been attacking heroes as well. The current president of the Heroes Public Safety Commission summarizes, while looking at a map of Japan. Behind her, Hawks looks unsettled as well. The 5 main victims were knocked out before losing their quirks. But some of them were just killed outright, like finger beams, he notes while looking at the map. The president's assistant noted that it was strange how they had lost their quirks. All the research the Shai Hisaki had done on those quirk-erasing bullets was destroyed. It was used to put them away, but no one else should know how to make them. Kazuhiko chimes in next by noting that it might not be that the quirks were being erased. That monster I fought with Izuku and the rest. He could steal quirks, right? The assistant seemed annoyed by the boy's point, but the president was willing to hear him out. While true meta factors like mine haven't been figured out at all, there's been almost 2.5 centuries worth of research done on quirks. It could be that someone found a way to duplicate quirks and could have done similar with the monsters. The president of the commission hums for a moment before agreeing. After his defeat and near death at All Might's hands, he likely was looking for various ways to keep his empire going. Maybe he thought that if he could copy his quirk, he could make a variety of extra vessels to destroy with him. Hawks then brought up that whoever was behind the matter may have been waiting for their moment. With a foe dead now and various other heroes, true metas, and now magic, it wouldn't be the right time to do full copies of himself. This one might just be a prototype, he thought while looking at the map, and wondering what or who else would be at risk at this time. The two excused themselves and Hawks complimented the young hero. Good catch on the possible culprit. I had been thinking about it as well, but I wasn't sure it would be possible with him dead and all. I just wonder what the person who now has that copy was thinking about. Letting themselves be implanted with a quirk like that. Kazuhiko said before disappearing with his radio wave form. Hawks smiled again before noting how fast the boy was. In a separate area of Japan, 9 and his crew attack a man in a truck. It's the father of Katsuma and Maharo. I finally found it, 9 said with his eyes glowing yellow. The man in question groaned and asked what was going on. Don't worry, I won't kill you. But I need something from you. 9 reaches for the man's head, but his path is interrupted by a beam from Bright Nova. You dare, he says with an apathetic, yet angry glare. Do you really think it's always that simple? That the answer can always be found with a quirk alone? Maybe do some real research, moron. Before either of them could start a fight, Blackout steps in and asks what it was that 9 was after. And with a blade around his neck again, 9 has no choice but to explain himself. I need his quirk. It's a type that could help with my main quirk's weakness. Right? The whole cellular destruction, because it's not a proper power. But I don't think it'll work the way you think. Blackout surmises while angering the other villains. Though none of them can do anything as he had them caught as well. He retracts his dark matter back to himself, and then picks up the elder Shimano. Sorry about them. They're idiots with quirks after all. But they did have an interest in you. You have a power that lets you regenerate or something. The man gulps and admits his quirk only worked on those with type of blood. 9's eyes widen, and he growls before acknowledging his was type B. Meaning it's worthless to you. You and your crew just rampaged a bit to take something you can't even use. Idiots. Bright Nova said with a shake of her head. Slice looks ready to cut the girl down. But just as she was about to, Bright Nova absorbed some of the sounds of the city and fired beam shots at their feet. Chimera snarled, but did agree she had a point. We're back to square one thanks to this. If you can't use your original quirk at its maximum, then we can't make the world we hope for. Mummy, though, notices Shimano's phone, and the fact it had a video of his children on it. Even if his doesn't work, perhaps one of these two has what you need, he says while playing the message. You're right. Quirks are hereditary after all, so one of them could have what we need. What about him? We can't just let him go. Chimera says while looking at Shimano. Blackout hums before saying he had an idea. There's some guy up north who's been growing in power. I helped him get some stuff, so I think he'd be open to holding this guy for a few days. Just long enough for the brat to get his new toy. Blackout said with a snide look towards 9. He grumbles before agreeing and checked the details on where they needed to go. That being Nabu Island and finding young Shimano Katsuma. Blackout takes his moment to teleport away and drop off the holder of cellular manipulation where he can't call the heroes or police. While Bright Nova keeps a close eye on the rest, make sure they stay focused on the true targets. Speaking of Katsuma, he was currently guiding Izuku, Melissa, and Ochako toward where the villain was. Melissa had the boy in his arms while flying with her armor. Ochako, meanwhile, was holding onto Izuku with her grapples and his tendrils. So where is the villain? Melissa asked while in transit. The boy points to some ruins on the secondary island to Nabu. That being Mount Shiroyama. Okay, I'll set you on the beach and we'll take care of the villain. Melissa said before jetting to said stretch of sand. Katsuma still seemed scared and nervous after flying with Melissa. She gave him a smile before checking one of her other sections of armor. Eventually finding what she was looking for. A capsule containing lollipops. Here, you were brave more than once. But leave this to us. Right as she said that and gave the candy to Katsuma, Izuku and Ochako arrived. He was surprised by all of this, and the surprise grew as they all headed inland to fight the villain he had seen. That being a large mantis creature. All right, time to squash this bug, Ochako says before running to a few boulders to pick them up. But Izuku and Melissa noticed something was off. I'm not sensing anything. Something this large, danger sense should pick up on it and… Aha, Izuku thinks while looking at the creature. Melissa meanwhile used her visor to scan the creature, but it was coming back negative, leading her to suspecting it wasn't what it appeared to be. Ochako, though, wasted some energy and a bit of what she had eaten by dropping the boulders on the creature. Hey, how did I miss? She asked while easing herself down. Because it wasn't there to begin with, Ochako. Do you want to find her? Izuku says, and then asks Melissa. The inventor girl smiles before holding up her arm to type in some commands. That being a bioscan to find humans nearby. And once she had Maharu's location, she flew over and picked her up. What the heck? How come you two weren't scared of that? She asked while trying to squirm out of Melissa's grasp. Izuku smiled and complimented Melissa's armor and scanning technology first before noting the creature she mad lacked something to make it threatening to him. It lacked force and energy. As soon as I saw it, I felt something off. I take it you have illusion powers? Izuku asked while looking down at the little troublemaker, who pouted before admitting she did. Ochako was pouting too as she had hyped herself up and made herself sick to fight a villain. And it turned out to be nothing. She eased up before sitting both down to try and lecture them on the danger of false alarms and distracting heroes. But before they could really get into it, Maharu used her quirk again to create a few illusions of themselves running away. Izuku was shocked with his girlfriends, but he advised that they let the two go for the time being. Lecturing them won't make them stop. Let's let them be for now. Maybe we can really show them what heroes are like another time, he said with a smile. Ochako and Melissa returned it, and they made their way back to the Nabu office to get some sleep. The next day things progress at the agency like usual, with the various hero students answering calls and helping on the island, or patrolling in many cases. Hello, UA Hero Agency. Lost luggage? HM. Hold a moment. Could you give me your name? Saphantite says before tapping into her magic much deeper. And with a snap of her fingers, she materializes all of the lost suitcases on the island. Think you got them all? Minta asked with a tilt of his head. Saphantite clears her throat before saying they had what the tourist was looking for at their agency. You can pick it up or I can bring it over. All right. I'll be there as a moment. Saphantite takes care of the matter with ease. But her face is relatively flat the entire time. While during the phone call she put on a happier tone, she was still not enjoying this work. Mostly because it seems like not only overkill, but kind of ridiculous. How many people lose their luggage these days? She thought before shifting to a strange smile for the leaving tourists. A few others were sent on different patrols and jobs around the island, with Tokoyami doing a normal town patrol and Ojiro helping Shoji at the beach. Mina meanwhile agrees to go with Izuku to help a family with their crops and fields. I could use something that gets me away from people, she said with a stretching of her back. But not before they both noticed Katsuma, just outside the office. Everything okay, Katsuma? Izuku asked as the boy turned away. Mina meanwhile could see what it was the boy was thinking, and it made her smile a bit. Been a while since I saw a kid this kind of pure. I'm really sorry about yesterday, Katsuma said while looking down at his feet. Izuku smiled before thanking the boy for apologizing, especially when Katsuma noted he wanted to apologize to the other heroes too. Mina smiles at the exchange, though Luno on her shoulder seemed a bit sickened by it, before asking why he gave a fake report of a villain attack. The thing is, my sister, she hates heroes. She said that even if I said there was a villain, the heroes would be too scared to fight them. That's why. As he trailed off, Mina finished his sentence. You believed in us. In us and in heroes in general. Despite what Big Sis said, right? Mina said with a wink to the boy, which just made him blush and hide his face under his hat. Izuku smiles at that while kneeling down to talk with the boy some more. He noticed the pin that Katsuma had and suspected that the boy wanted to be a hero as well. Not with my quirk. It's no good for hero work. Katsuma says sadly. Izuku just laughs a bit at this and tells the boy a quirk didn't really matter. A long time ago, I thought it always mattered. Because that was what we were told for so long. It was what we believed to be a fact. But I know more than one quirkless hero. And you do too. You remember Melissa? The girl with the armor? She doesn't have a quirk at all, and she can fight with the best of us. Katsuma is floored by this and asked if that was really true. Mina backs up the statement before reminding the boy that Izuku wasn't born with a quirk. And someone from our other class lost their quirk, but didn't let it stop them. She kept going with some encouragement and is one of the best heroes. The little boy is starry-eyed at hearing all of this and asked if he could learn how to do that as well. Izuku takes a moment to sit down while thinking about what Maharu had said the day before and could relate to the fear she likely felt. A fact Mina picked up on as well. You aren't going to say anything about it? Luno questioned in her mind. The pink girl rolled her eyes and responded with, not right now. This kid honestly could just use a bit more hope. And that is what Midori is all about. She then noticed that Izuku's emotions were shifting a bit. As he had asked Katsuma what kind of hero he wanted to be, the boy mostly focused on the idea of fighting villains. But that isn't all we, guess that is part of the point to this program, Izuku and Mina thought at the same time. I look at being a hero as trying to help as many people as possible. And sure, that can be done by fighting villains, and especially saving people during a disaster. But it can even just be helping in some other small ways. Despite what my mentor would often think, Izuku said, while thinking about John and his distaste for the hero profession. But at the end of it all, the true meta-hero did do those small things that most wouldn't think of. Just not when people were looking. Mina was considering it as well, and how even small spells like her search magic, as well as her acid, could be great for many emergencies and fights. But also be able to do what it did yesterday. Find a lost boy and help him find his family. The green-haired teen stood and adjusted his sunglasses before holding a hand out to Katsuma. If you really believe you can be a hero, then you have to give it your all. To save whoever you can. Katsuma was wide-eyed at this and returned Izuku's smile and shook the teen's hand. Not to be outdone, Mina put her own pink palm atop the two's and said, "We'll be waiting for you." It surprised Izuku and Luno how chipper she sounded in the moment. Almost like she's back to her old self, Izuku thought slightly sadly. Mostly at how she had been broken down over the last few months. As Katsuma runs off, old lady Suzumura smiled as she brought some groceries for the teens. Before recounting Katsuma and Maharu's story. How their mom died when they were young, and their father was always away for work to support the pair. Those of us in the neighborhood look after them as best we can. But it must be so lonely. Not having parents around at that age, the old lady said sadly. Luno tightened their grip on Mina's shoulder hearing that. So, the pink girl patted her demon familiar's head to comfort them. Come on, Midori. We should go take care of that job. Mina said before thanking Miss Suzumura and having Luno take the groceries in. They get to it until late in the day. As the sun was setting on the island, a resounding crash could be heard in the bay, where the ferry had crashed through the breakwater blocks. As it surged toward the docks, though, Izuku appeared and intercepted the out-of-control ship. Crap, this isn't going to be easy, he shouted while pushing back with 25% power. It did finally stop, but it damaged the dock a bit. Midori, what happened? Mina asked while teleporting in with magic. She looked shocked at the ship buried into the dock and checking on Izuku. Something felt off, so I rushed over. Couldn't stop it in time though. Too much energy even for me. That is when something else goes off in his head. Is this danger sense? Something's off. But I'm not sure what Izuku thinks while clutching his head. Mina steps up and tries to treat any possible injuries, but isn't noting anything. Atop the ship, 9 and his followers plus the 2 true metas were discussing their plans. I don't want to be interrupted, 9 says before telling Chimera, Mummy, and Bright Nova to cause a diversion. So how should we do it? Chimera asked. Before 9 could say much, Bright Nova facepalmed and said, It should be obvious. Make as much noise as possible. Not only will that distract any authorities or idiots, but it'll boost my power up too. Mummy narrowed his eyes at the woman, but agreed with what she said. Slice. Stay with Blackout. He'll be able to. Hello? Huh. We've got 2 odd signatures down at the dock. Guess it's the 1 or 2 who stopped us. Then we might need to keep them busy first. At least until you 4 can get clear. Red, you do what you do best. I'll keep the heroes busy. Or I'll just kill them. Most can't measure up against a true meta like me. Blackout says before rolling his neck. 9 agrees with his plan and tells him to go first, with Blackout teleporting to find Izuku and Mina. Oh shit, he says when he recognizes Izuku. No other choice, I guess. I've got a job to do, Blackout says before phasing in at high speed to try and cut the pair. While he was doing that, Slice launched her hair and destroyed all of the boats at the docks. To keep anyone from leaving. At least the normal way they would all expect. For Izuku and Mina though, they were both shocked to see Blackout. I thought you were arrested, Izuku says before powering up and focusing on the young man. Mina does the same and tries to get into a rhythm to fight. You really think those idiots can hold me? They still didn't get that my powers are a quirk. Meaning the ways to shut it down aren't like that. Blackout says this before disappearing in a puff of smoke, so to speak, and then attacking Mina from behind. She sensed it though and ducked under the dark matter blade kick. She goes for a kick of her own, but the true meta villain evades with a little shifting of his weight. Izuku goes in to punch the villain in the face, but said face dissipates as his punch is about to connect. Damn, how did Todoroki beat this guy? Izuku thinks aloud, while the villain sinks into the ground to attack from below. But Izuku won't let him and grabs onto Mina's waist. Hold on tight, he said before taking off and watching below for the villain. Only to see the cell tower falling and other sections of the island being destroyed. He's not the only one here. But I can't sense them all. I could only feel that disturbance when the breakwater was destroyed. And my other senses aren't as sharp as. Mina slaps Izuku once before saying, As whose? John's. That doesn't matter right now. We've got 2 villains in front of us. So we deal with that. Speaking of. Mina first launched globs of her acid, and then a spell behind Izuku to counter Slice's attack. She asks that Izuku drop her down so she could try to fight the woman. Don't worry about me or that Blackout guy. Try to get in touch with the others and tell them what's going on. Izuku doesn't want to leave her, but he can hear the destruction happening further inland and the screams of the civilians. You're right. You sure you've got this? He asked before dropping her atop the ferry. Don't worry about me. Just save who you can, Mina said before squaring up to Slice. Brave little girl. But don't think it'll be easy. The pink half-demon let out a wry chuckle before saying, Trust me. I know exactly what you're thinking and how you operate, and I can deal with it. I'll get into more of Mina's fight next chapter, as well as Izuku's initial confrontation with 9 and the others. Have to work around the fact that Bakugo and Zero aren't a part of this version of 1, or rather 2A. Please review. Now for some more meat and a few good startup fights for this story. Plus, gotta get ready for the bigger beatdowns and elements to balance out Izuku's fight with 9. After all, this version is a lot stronger and has more to work with. Mina Pov. Not sure on the best way to handle this, but I don't have a ton of other choices. Midori mentioned that Todoroki beat the one guy, but it took creativity and blinding him. I may not have that direct advantage, but I think I can keep him from hitting me. As for the one up here, you think I'll just let you stop me? The redhead shouts before launching her hair at me. Not the best opponent. For her at least. Have some of this, acid shot, I call out while tossing out globs of my acid towards the woman, who panics as I easily melt through her hair and slide in close to finish the fight. Going down, I shout as I wind up a punch for her face. Not today, she isn't. I hear beside me as Blackout arrives and grabs onto the woman. He then teleports away behind me. Slice. Get clear. You've done your part in making sure they can't get away. But you can't take this brat down. Her quirk is an easy counter to you, but not to me. Huh, well, that's different. Guess this guy, while looking down on her a bit, seems to respect her as well. She doesn't feel the same and seems more obsessed with some gray-haired dude. That one with the gear on. He's the boss and the one you're in love with, right? I ask with a smirk directed Slice's way. Ooh, that blush tells me all I need to know. You wouldn't even begin to understand what we are hoping for. How we are trying to stop others from labeling us villains. She shouted before turning to run. I can't catch her right now. Namely because Blackout isn't giving me the room to create my spell. Which is why he keeps going for my neck and other parts of my body to fight me. I switch back to my quirk for a while, and it gets him to back off. Especially when I have something else I can do with it. Can't touch me, Acidman. I shout as I completely envelope my body in my acid. Got the idea for this trick from Kirishima. Seems to work pretty well. He can't slash me with his dark matter blades like this. Now I just need to make this spell work. If I can get it done, I think I can freeze him. You brat. I hear him shout as I see the villain warp around me and attack from multiple angles. But none of it works to get past my Acidman. There is one problem though. I can't keep this up much longer. Not only am I feeling dehydrated from maintaining it, but I can feel some of my clothes dissolving. Yeah, there went my panties. I really wish Sahara would show me how to make some that can hold up better. Not important. Gotta focus on the matter at hand. And the spell is ready. Time to chill out, I shout as I expand the circle beneath the villain. He looks panicked for a moment, especially when the circle follows him as he teleports. I think he's called Blackout or something. Anyway, he narrowed his eyes at me as the spell was starting to activate, and then smirked. I didn't know what to think, and I was shocked when I saw him disappear. As did my spell. Great. How did he do that? I wove it like Sahara said with a tracking spell, so he couldn't have gotten away. I thought aloud while looking for any trace of the villain. Hey, wait. What's this weird feeling on my... No. In an instant, I'm surrounded by what feels like black ooze on my body. Clever girl. Not sure how that trick worked, but it almost got me. But then I realized something. You said chill out, meaning you were going to try freezing me like that kid. And while it did work, it wasn't exactly how he beat me. And you won't get a new chance to take me down. As he was talking, I felt my arms bound behind my back while being forced downward. I didn't expect him to be able to do this. And it's getting worse, since now his dark matter, or whatever, is wrapping around my throat. Hello? Well, this is interesting. You don't have any panties. Someone's a dirty girl. And given the flush on your cheeks as I'm binding you, I'd swear you were getting off on this. I panic as he says that before tightening my thighs. And shit, he's right. I can actually feel how wet I'm getting from this. Why now? Why does my new nature as a demon crop up in this shitty moment? I bite my lip as I try to get some air, but I can feel his grip tightening. And he's laughing, or maybe. Wait. Midnight mentioned during some of our sessions that she could take plenty of people off guard by playing into her costume and the image it brought up. Maybe I'm going about this wrong. I've been using the spells Sahara showed me, sometimes sparing with Luno, but I've never once played into or worked with my succubus side, mostly because I'm ashamed of it. But this might be my chance. I just need to let him, and it take over in a sense. Harder, I gasp out while tightening my thighs again. Blackout is shocked by this and loosens his grip for a moment. Long enough for me to catch a bit of my breath and to try something special. As he wraps around my neck again, I up the little amounts of my acid I'm producing. And now I just need to mix it with my succubus fluids and pheromones. Yes, now he's getting a good taste of those as he watches my eyes roll back a bit. Okay, yes, I'm slightly getting off on this. And at the same time I can take more now that I am a demon. Or rather letting the demon take over. So I should be able to hold out a bit longer. Yes, just a bit more and you lose. I gasp out as I see Blackout's eyes glazing over. He tries to shake it off, but he soon collapses to the side, dropping me from his dark matter. As I'm coughing while regaining my breath, I see the villain who had me dead to rights twitching on the ground. And he's hard. Didn't need to see that. I might remember this next time Minta decides to pull something. Let alone plenty of things Midnight has been trying to punish me with the last few months. I hope Midori has gotten in contact with the others, because this has only begun. No Pav. As Mina was facing off with her opponents, the rest of Nine's crew were attacking the city. Chimera had destroyed the cell tower and Mummy was using his quirk to take control of a number of items. That is still weird, but I guess that's normal with quirks. Not that my power is much different. Bright Nova says before firing a few shots powered by the screams of the civilians. Namely shots fired at Izuku who had started pursuing her. He takes a laser to the shoulder and winces from the pain. Damn. Why didn't Danger Sense give me a heads up? Izuku thinks, while forcing his shoulder to heal faster. Because it's still unstable as far as the quirks and link to your true meta powers go. Izuku widens his eyes at hearing this in his head. He closes his eyes and starts to talk with the previous holder in his mind. What do you mean it's unstable? I thought for sure I had a handle on it. He asks while his upper body could be seen. Shinomori Hikage nods before noting. You had something of a handle on it. But remember, quirks work more like muscles. They need to be exercised to improve. You spent a month practicing with your kinetic powers alone. Meaning you forgot to refine the quirk, and it's gotten weaker. Izuku facepalms after realizing he was correct. Okay, guess I'm back to basics as it were. Hopefully the others can handle some of the other trouble and villains. That or I need to get away from this lady. He thinks aloud within his mind before returning to normal space and time. His eyes flash green before coming around the corner again. While he doesn't sense the beam coming, he still knows about where it will be aimed, and quickly drops to avoid the shot. He then uses his flight abilities to stay above the street, and then thrust himself forward. As he's trying to attack Bright Nova, he notices that she seemed disgruntled. Accelerated thinking can help with perception, and that she was talking to herself. That something. Better get what quirk he's after from the kid. Or this. I don't think I should repeat that. Trip will be pointless. Why are quirks so useless? Like destroying your body every time you use it. As he's putting that together and trying to attack the light bender. Don't think I'll make it that easy, she shouts before refocusing a set of sounds into a massive blast of light. Izuku dodges, but in turn she blasts a few buildings, causing more damage and thus more sound. She smirks before taking some smaller shots at Izuku. Alright, that's it. Delaware Air Force smash. Izuku calls out before unleashing his own shots with a few flicks of his fingers. The attacks couldn't do anything against Bright Nova's, but they could impact her and help redirect him when needed. I need help, he thinks while worrying about the others on the island. And then something beeps. While he was dealing with that problem, Aoyama, Minta, and Toru had gone out following the screams and other disturbances. Whoa, are those real villains? Minta questioned first while panicking. It looks like it, Toru says with her gloves in front of her probable face. What are villains doing here? Aoyama asked before firing his laser to blast some of the items Mummy was controlling, then redirecting the beams through both his suit and Toru. As she had stepped up to take the largest beam and send it right at Mummy's feet, the bandaged man grunts before saying, 3 heroes, out in the middle of nowhere. He then launches his wrappings and takes control of other parts of the environment, including making a few very large and durable protectors for himself. Minta starts freaking out before throwing his orbs to try and stop some of the wrapped items. Hagakure, can you call the office? He shouts between throws. She reported she couldn't. And I didn't grab those new radio things Melissa made. I didn't think there was really any need. Well, there clearly is now. Ooh. And I can't take much more of this, Aoyama reports as his stomach groans from the pain of his quirk. Along the beach, Ojiro was with Shoji and Tsuyu as chimeras started rampaging towards the civilians. Get them clear, I'll handle this, he shouted before building up some kai in his foot. Flare shot, he shouted before launching the attacks. Chimera grunted and reeled a bit before saying, You're a little young to be a hero. And how are you making that weird fire? It can't be part of your quirk. Ojiro takes his stance before saying, It's not. Those flames were something I trained to create. Through the power of kai. The villain laughed and called that a joke. Kai don't exist. The only power is quirks. And you can't do something like that from training. Only if you're strong enough or were born strong. He shouted before picking up some boulders and chucking them at Ojiro. He dodges a few of them, but he decides to show just how strong he and his kai are with a new technique. This one is for you, Sifu, he thinks before holding his hands to the side and drawing in more kai. As the boulder comes down, he calls out, Gaia burst blow, thrusting himself forward with his tail and causing a fiery explosion with his punch. It's nowhere near on your level, but it should be enough to put some hurt on tougher opponents. The tailed teen thinks before launching some more flare shots at Chimera, who is getting more annoyed as Ojiro keeps attacking him. How the hell did you get 2 quirks like that? Chimera shouted while blocking Ojiro's attacks. Until he finally had enough and unleashed an attack he was saving for later. A fire breath beam that he shot at Ojiro, who was in turn saved by Tokoyami. I've got him, Dark Shadow, Tokoyami shouted before unleashing his quirk upon the villain. But he wasn't impressed and easily punched it away. Mayhaps I should have trained with Svoboda as well, the raven-headed teen said as his quirk recoiled. While he was covering himself a bit from the shockwave of the punch, Ojiro was standing firm. Ha! You think that's a strong punch? I've taken far worse from someone way stronger than you, Ojiro said before telling Tokoyami to alert the others. I'll try to take him down with my kai training, but I don't know for sure if it's enough, he says before using a flame tail tornado. Tokoyami takes off and returns to the agency, where a civilian was also informing the teens about the situation, including the villains that Izuku and Mina had faced off with. Ida took charge and delegated who needed to go where. We've got multiple villains to deal with, so we split into groups to deal with the matters. Momo nodded before putting her own thoughts in. Melissa, we need more of those special radio receivers. Then you go with Ochako to back up Midoriya. I'll take Gyro with me to find Mina and administer first aid. Good idea, Sahara. I hate to ask it this way, but could you focus on evacuations? We need to do this ourselves. Not just rely on the overwhelming power and experience you have, Ida says with a complicated look. Sahara sighs before agreeing. But once everyone is clear, I'm going after those villains." The two vice reps nod and shift their focus once more. "Todoroki, Sato, Tokoyami, and I will help. Ojiro and Koda will come to help with evacuation. Even with his Kai training, I don't like his odds against that villain. Kirishima and Kaminari will fight the villain at the shopping center." With shouts of affirmation and radio receivers handed out, the UA agency got to work. "Let's go, Melissa. I'm worried about Izuku," Ochako said before removing her weight and attaching herself to the armored heroine, who agrees and hopes they can catch up to him quickly. At the shopping center, the group facing Mummy were being pushed back, and Aoyama was at his limit with his quirk. "I'm not much better, man," Minta said as his head was bleeding quite a bit. "If only I could do more. Maybe I should have learned some magic with Mina and Sahara." Toru thinks as the golems float above the group. Just as they were about to be set upon, Kirishima leapt in first to punch out a few of the foes. But while he was doing that, he threw out something special. A handful of Kaminari's tracer discs, allowing the electrification user to fire his quirk at multiple points and targets. "We've got your backs," Kirishima shouted before going unbreakable and plowing through the golems. Kaminari looks around as they are all getting swarmed and decides to use a quick burst of his indiscriminate shock. It slightly shorts him out, but not enough to keep him out of the fight. While they were doing that, Momo and Gyro arrived to evacuate their comrades. "Hold on. Let's get you clear," the vice rep said before helping Aoyama walk out of the danger zone. But not before dropping an auto turret to blast some of their foes. "Hey, you sure you'll be okay?" Gyro questioned before patching up Minta's scalp a bit. "I've got plenty of lipids. I can make a few things," Momo says before making some shields and flash grenades. Gyro takes the moment to question where Mina was, only to be wrapped by Mummy's bandages and used to attack her friends. On the beach, Ojiro was holding his own with Chimera, the man's head having been scorched by burn heel and then a set of burst palms. So the heteromorphic type got a bit more serious and unleashed a strong set of blows to knock Ojiro back. Shoji tried to step in, but he was outpaced and outmuscled by the strange villain, who took a moment to mock the tentacled boy for his appearance, only for Ida to rush in and stun the villain with a kick to the head. "Leave him to us," Todoroki shouted before using an ice wave to hold Chimera in place. Tokoyami then dove in on Ida's orders with Sato for a strong hit. But it was nowhere near enough. Chimera broke out of the ice and punched Sato through a boulder like it was nothing. "Kids or not, I'm not taking on this many heroes." "Well, we won't let you win that easy," Ojiro said before taking his stance and unleashing some flare shots again. But the villain had figured out his pattern and was dodging. Great. What else is happening on this island? Ojiro and Ida thought as they faced their opponent. With the Shimano siblings, they were running home to avoid the danger of the villains. But their home was quickly destroyed by Nine. While the two children looked on in fear, Nine used his scanning quirk to check the two over. "Found you," he said upon noticing that Katsuma had a similar signature to his father. Maharo tried to use her illusions to throw him off or scare Nine. But the man was unaffected and kept slowly walking towards the children. All they could do was cower as Nine reached out to try and steal the power of cell activation from Katsuma, only for the man to be surprised by Melissa appearing and flying away with the children, and then getting a sucker punch or kick from Ochako to the back of his head. "What?" Nine questioned as the pair of heroines got away with the kids. "Deku was right to call us to help, but that was too close," Ochako said while recovering from the drawbacks of her zero gravity. Melissa agreed before asking if the kids could run while they faced the villain, arming her weapons in the process. Flashback. "Hello, Izuku. We finally got in contact with you," Melissa said as she and Ochako made their way to the harbor to see what had happened. Izuku grunted before acknowledging the two over the radio Melissa had given him. He dodged a few more shots from Bright Nova before saying, "I need you two to check deeper into the island. I've got my hands full with a true meta-villain." Both girls were shocked hearing that. Ochako asking if it really was a true meta-villain. "I'm not 100%. But given I saw her talking about quirks in a negative light, and she's got power of her own, that would be my guess," he said before using some kinetic tendrils to obstruct and attack his foe. Bright Nova blasted a few of the bindings before focusing into a concentrated attack on Izuku. But he wouldn't make it that easy and quickly flew above his foe to engage her that way. "I think they or someone working with them are after a specific person. Check close to the center, as fast as you can," he said before unleashing an St. Louis Air Force smash to try and defeat the villain. But he missed, and she could use the sound and shockwaves he created for more power. Izuku groaned and said he had to focus on his fight for now. "I trust you too. Save everyone you can," he said before hanging up the communication. End flashback. "You heard him, Melissa. We need to save who we can. Especially these two," Ochako said, while adjusting her grapples and putting themselves between the Shimano siblings and where they could hear 9 coming through. He blasted some of the trees before using his scan quirk again. He hummed before laughing at the two of them. "A quirk that removes gravity. And a worthless nobody without a quirk. Shouldn't you have died out already?" 9 said while giving Melissa a scathing look. Only to be surprised by the flash from a bit of her gear, and then a blast to his stomach from her armor. "A quirk is worthless in the larger scheme. It's all about how you use what power you have. And mine happens to involve this armor," she said while having her helmet go full armor. Katsuma looks up at Melissa in awe while Maharu is stunned. Ochako tells the children to run again while they faced off with 9. Back with Izuku, he found he was getting better at anticipating Bright Nova's attacks. She mostly attacks with her hands and fingertips. But given what I know and understand of true metas, she can probably emit light from anywhere. And it seems to get stronger with noise. She could fire stronger shots after my St. Louis smash. Not sure how that works. But it might just be what I need to turn this on her. Izuku evades a few more beam barrages from the woman, until he notes that her shots seem to be getting weaker. But rather than rush her, he took a different approach. "I'll make a lot of noise if I go at her at full speed. So, time to slow it down," he thinks before landing before the light manipulator. He lets out a gentle breath before closing his eyes behind his sunglasses, letting danger sense and his kinetic sensing take over as he walks toward Bright Nova at a measured pace. She's shocked by this, but doesn't hold back on her opportunity to blast a strong hero. She takes aim right at Izuku's head and fires. But he evades gently with the tilting of his head. This stuns the villain, who starts upping the number of shots from her fingers. But Izuku had figured out a way to link danger sense and his kinetic sense. "I can feel the kinetic energy she is generating with each of the beams. And with danger sense, I can narrow down which ones could actually hit me. Add in how she's been acting this whole time, and I can predict how she'll attack." Bright Nova keeps firing shots of light to take out Izuku, only to get more and more frustrated by his consistent evasion. Not to say he doesn't take some hits. He gets a bit of his hair singed, and a few beams nick his limbs. But it gets him close enough to try and finish the fight. Namely by building up a bit of black whip in his hand, and then wrapping them around Bright Nova's. While she is surprised, Izuku opens his eyes and boosts up to his capable level to punch the villain in the face. She's knocked back and almost out by the blow, but manages to hold on to emit a powerful dazzling blast from her eyes. Izuku doesn't take damage, but he is blinded and doesn't notice her break out of the bindings. She quickly runs away while Izuku shakes out of the stupor of her attack before worrying about Ochako, Melissa, Mina, and the others. "I trust my girlfriends, but I'm worried about Mina. If nothing else, I can get her back to the others if needed. Hang on, all of you," He thinks aloud before taking off back towards the docks, worried about what else might come to fight them on this island. Okay, I will admit, I'm using Dazzler from X-Men for Bright Nova's powers. And yes, I'm intentionally making her somewhat flat for now. I'll get more into her next chapter. But this chapter was a bit more about Mina and how she can fight now, let alone struggling with who and what she is. I'll also finish up some of the other fights next chapter too, including showing what Ojiro can really do, how the fight with Mummy will end, and getting into Melissa giving 9 a lesson in humility. Also, completely unrelated, but I am really liking my adventures with Superman. And it's only 2 episodes in. Great to see my fellow Smallville guy getting some new love. And yes, there is a comic that identified roughly where Smallville should be. And I'm from the same area. 9 shook his head and glared at Melissa as she and Ochako put themselves between the villain and the children. Ochako tells the two to get further away while both 9 and Melissa power up their beam attacks. Tech Mite's wrist guns fire off, and she tries to hit his limbs to stun. But 9 surprises her with a shielding quirk to stop her attacks. Let's try this, Ochako calls out once she was sure the kids were clear. She removed the gravity of a few logs and used her grapples to launch them towards 9. Zo satellites, she calls out before returning the gravity to increase the impact. 9 just shifts his air wall shield and nonchalantly aims his finger beams at the girl. Keep on the move, Ochako, Melissa says before taking off and firing some beam shots again. The villain just seems annoyed as he keeps blocking or blasting at the pair, especially because he can't use the other application of air wall to knock them around as directly. Ochako, here. This might help with other maneuverability issues, Melissa says before passing a belt to the gravity girl. She noted it was an extra thruster, but it wasn't as strong as her back jets. I get it. I use this to keep from getting knocked around. Now though, we need to keep him busy. Still, all his quirks are odd. Think he's a true meta? No, not from what my scans are picking up. Definitely a quirk or group of quirks. I don't know who he is, but he's got a power just like that monster who fought Uncle Might, the inventor reported while taking a few shots with her wrist guns. Back at the center, Gyro was being used to sound blast attack her friends thanks to Mummy. I can't take control of living things, but that doesn't mean I can't use the clothes and gear you're wearing, he says before launching Gyro for an attack. Kaminari and Kirishima put themselves between the evacuating heroes before the former notices something. Namely that the bandages were moving funny in Gyro's binding. Suddenly, they could all hear a low rumbling, and Gyro broke herself free from Mummy's quirk. You can't control living things? Well, good thing my quirk is a mutant type, and I could still use my gear, Kaminari. Gyro calls out before plugging into her wrist speakers and sound blasting Mummy. It doesn't defeat him, but the noise leaves him open for Kaminari to hit the villain's leg with one of his tracer discs. Have a taste of this, he calls out before electrifying the villain, causing Mummy to lose his grip on most of his golems, while Kirishima moved in with a strong punch to knock the villain out. That's done at least. We need to get to the others, Kirishima says before noticing a green blur move by. And Mina was dropped with Momo and the others. Ashido. Man, she looks rough. Not as bad as it could be. The last piece was said by Mina as she was coughing and starting to stand. She tells the rest she handled 1 villain, but that there were still at least 4 more. Let's get this guy out of here and help the others, Momo said while treating some of Mina's injuries. The others agree and make their way to the other hotspots. Back on the beach, most of the other heroes were struggling, mainly because Chimera was able to counter them with just raw strength. It's nowhere near fighting John. But still, he's able to counter my ice just like that, Shoto said while trying to hold his ground. Saphantite looked to the group while creating some portals to get the civilians away. I'd be willing to bet he's got uninspired names for himself, and that power. Though I can't deny I'd understand the one. Chimera tries to make a move, but Saphantite shifts her focus for a moment to blast him back with magic, and then quick cast a few spells with her genie powers to make the sand attack him. "Little wench," he snarls out before breaking out of the sand binding him. He then unleashes his fire breath to counter Shoto's, until it is inadvertently enhanced by Ojiro, stepping up with his flare shots. It doesn't overpower the attack, but it closes some of the gap Shoto was stuck with. We can't keep this up, Tenya thinks after his recipro burst attack was knocked away. Back with tech might and Unraveling, they were struggling now as Nine had figured out how their attacks and patterns worked, sending Ochako flying with a burst of air when she tried to get more debris to attack him with, then hitting her body with his finger beams. As he was moving to take the disabled girl's quirk, Melissa jetted in and slammed him with her full output from her armor, before ejecting and making it explode while trying to get Ochako away. But while he was burned slightly, it wasn't enough to stop Nine, as he used the air wall to knock them both away and into an embankment. Katsuma and Maharu saw this and ran to the hurt hero's sides. "You need to stay back," Melissa said, while turning one of her spare bracelets into a scaled-down gadget gauntlet, glaring at the villain through the cracked glasses, trying to get a read on him. "Weak and pathetic. You can't hope to stop me with those," Nine claims before taking aim at Melissa, only to be frustrated and furious as she stopped his shots with her barrier tech. "I may not have the same various applications, but I can build plenty of gear for the situation." She activates the other gauntlet to take a shot, but Nine's wall still keeps her from landing any real hit. Melissa holds her ground though, as does Ochako as she gets back up from being knocked into the embankment. Unraveling grunts a bit before saying, "I'm not done. If Izuku can push through crazy pain when using his power, John can get past his insanity to fight for others, and Sahara can learn beyond anything believed. Then so can we." Maharu tears up seeing these two willing to put everything out to help them and involuntarily activates her quirk, creating two huge super deformed versions of the girls while Nine takes aim. And just as he was about to shoot, Izuku rushed in and struck. "A quirk or group of quirks with? No, I can't understand what I'm gack," Nine says while blocking with air wall, only for it to be broken by a strong Las Vegas smash kick from the green team. Melissa noticed this, but knew it wasn't the time to worry about the matter, as she was just glad Kibu had made it. "Sorry I'm late," he said while taking his stance to stare down his foe. Ochako and Melissa both let out breaths before the former said, "You weren't late. You were just on time. But be careful. He's got a bunch of quirks. Like that a foe guy." Izuku is a bit wide-eyed at that, but takes it in stride. So, he found a different way to stick around, Izuku thought, while feeling some twinges from the vestiges in his mind. Nine seems to be keeping his cool, but all of the heroes had been throwing him off, especially with Melissa being able to keep him at bay when he believed himself almost all-powerful. As Izuku blasted forward for another attack, Nine used both applications for air wall to first block and knock back Izuku's attack, and then knock him into the air where he could be sniped with the finger beams. But Kibu was less impressed with that set of attacks after dealing with Bright Nova. "You may not have her weird source restriction, but your shots are nothing compared to what she can put out," he says while floating and then flying through the air. Nine grimaces at that while trying to attack Izuku, who had figured out the villain's own pattern and tried to get in for a capture or takedown, moving rapidly with his flight and some kinetic boosting, before kicking one hand away to go in for a Detroit smash, only for Danger Sense to flare up as Izuku shifted his arms in front of him to block a new attack, using his tendrils and black whips to cushion the blow from a snake-like creature that came out of Nine's back. "Whoa, that was close," Izuku said while reassessing his situation. But he wasn't the only one considering their options. 9 was unsettled as he saw Izuku's power rising as the green teen circulated 30% of his power to go for an attack. Damn. I was hoping to wait till I had cell activation. But I have no choice. Izuku moves in to try a Kansas City smash. But danger sense kicks in again, and he feels the kinetic energy build up above him. So it's like that, he thinks before dodging the lightning bolt 9 had tried to unleash on him. The villain was shocked by this, and his panic grew as Izuku got close to use a Detroit smash to impact his side. Before Izuku could follow up though, 9 changed the target of his attack. Namely by dropping bolts on top of his girlfriends and the children. Melissa quickly raised her shield to help protect them all, but her injuries were catching up with her. So Ochako braced her back after pushing the children slightly. But both still felt the shocks through their system. Izuku then jumps in to absorb and redirect the lightning away from them, using his tendrils to act as a lightning rod while grounding himself. 9 coughs a bit before turning towards the Shimano siblings again, only to be stopped by something that surprised him. Even though he'd been knocked out by the lightning strike, Izuku still had enough consciousness to wrap a tendril around the villain's arm. "You nuisance," 9 said before preparing to use the air wall shockwave again. "You're not touching him," Melissa said while she and Ochako used their gear to distract 9. But they were both shocked when the villain collapsed. "What? I know we couldn't have done much damage. Maybe Izuku?" Ochako asked while supporting her grapple arm. Slice then appeared and helped her beleaguered leader, hardening her hair to capture them. "I would be wise to come along quietly," she said coldly. But a new voice called out to help them. "Not gonna happen, bitch, and have a taste of this." Both villains were suddenly struck by lightning, but not from 9's quirk. This was due to Sahara as a group of portals opened up beneath the heroes and the Shimano children. She then poofed into the clearing while glaring down her opponents. "You think that's enough to stop us?" Bright Nova called out before firing some light blasts at the genie, who just turned into smoke before firing her own magic shots. The true meta shakes off the hits before regrouping next to 9 and Slice. Sahara just glares at the group before creating magic circles in her hands, and creating a near wall of pure magic that was ready to blast them all, evidenced by the gathering magic and elemental energies within some circles. "Who said I'd give you a choice?" she said coldly. Slice curses under her breath with 9. Before Bright Nova quietly advised that they get clear. Blackout and Mummy were beaten. 9's disabled. And the noise is weakening. "And I don't know about you, but I don't like our odds against this chick," the shorter woman advised while preparing to blind the genie when needed. "She's right. You're in no place to lead or fight anymore," Slice says while pulling out a flare gun and signaling Chimera. 9 brought up that Sahara could get them away with her powers. "Don't worry about that now. We'll deal with it in a moment," Bright Nova says before using her powers to blind Sahara. As Chimera leapt off, Ojiro and Shoto both wanted to go after the villain. "Hold it, both of you. The 4 of us couldn't take him down, and this could likely be a trap," Ida advised with a hand on each of their shoulders. Ojiro grit his teeth and tightened his fists in frustration. "I put all this training in, but it still isn't enough. John would have no trouble with him." Depowered or not, Joe thought, while feeling angry at his inability to defeat his foe with his Kai. "Focus here for now. We have to take care of the islanders," Takoyami advised while looking back to the few who were still around after Sahara left. They all made their way to a factory on the island to recover, Momo and Kaminari doing all they could to supply them. Mina grunted before stepping up and casting a spell of her own to help. "This should let you put out a bit more, Kaminari. And it's not much. But this bit of food should help too, Momo. Right, Luna?" "Yeah. Magic is a bit weird when it comes to food. It usually just makes average tasting food. But right now, Calories are more important, the hellhound said while looking over the teens in confusion. Mostly in how they could be so worried about others when their own lives were in serious danger. Ida meanwhile worked to reassure the civilians about their safety, while the various other members were helping with humanitarian relief and the like. Sahara herself conjuring up some supplies once she checked the whole island and recovered what she could. Was this more of what you got involved with in your world? Minta asked quietly while passing out some blankets. She let out a sigh before acknowledging that it was accurate. Though not until I joined the Watchers. Before, I was just a student or researcher, you might say. The short teen nodded before asking if the villains had said anything. The bandaged one is keeping quiet. But that blackout guy was willing to talk a bit. Guess you've met him before? Koda noted while helping cook. Minta hummed before remembering that Todoroki had taken him down. But this time Ashido did it. Maybe the magic thing helped close the gap. Sahara rolled her eyes before asking what he said. Just that. This wasn't over. And 9, the leader I guess, would be back for something. Tsuyu said before questioning how Izuku, Melissa, and Ochako were doing. Mina was the one to check on them, and the other injured that Shoto and Shoji were looking after. I've got some food here. You guys can take a break. How are they doing? She asked with worry. Shoto sighed before saying, Midoriya is healing passively thanks to his power. But other two are in pretty rough shape. Shoji noted that the doctors from the clinic were doing what they could. Damn it. Why didn't I learn any healing magic? Mina asked herself as the doctors shook their heads. Can I try something? Katsuma asks, while looking scared with his sister. The older teens look at him with some worry, but Maharo explains some of how his quirk worked. The boy couldn't let the 2 girls who saved him stay like that and pleaded to help. The doctor gave the go-ahead and the boy rushed over to use his quirk. At the lighthouse, Chimera, Slice, and Bright Nova were watching over 9. While the 2 villains reminisce about how he recruited them to not be seen as monsters because of their quirks, Bright Nova listened in calmly. Even as 9 had become a willing lab rat to increase his power, at the worsening cost of his health. So that's where it started with you, huh? And you think that really would make things right? What about someone like me, who starts out with nothing? Bright Nova questioned with some minor fire, remembering how others treated her like a lesser because she was born without a quirk. Only for, not long after John and Sahara arrived in their world, she awakened her power and used it to kill all those who had treated her like she didn't matter. Starting with her parents. Chimera looked down before admitting they hadn't considered that when they started. We were just sick of being labeled dangerous, monsters, and villains. But after learning about that Jotaro kid and all the other crazy things, maybe we need to consider more than we originally thought. I agree. Especially since, even though he was captured, Blackout is powerful enough to have us basically dead to rights. And we couldn't even fight back. Slice noted while thinking about her own past, and how their system could be used to make dangerous people like Bright Nova, or even someone like Melissa. The true meta nods before saying they should think on the matter more while she was gone. Where are you going? Chimera asked with some confusion. Bright Nova turns back before saying, I'm going to make sure they can't get away thanks to that genie girl. Wish me luck. Back at the factory, Melissa and Ochako were still being healed by Katsuma, with the boy pushing himself to save them from all the injuries they endured. Izuku, meanwhile, had recovered enough to wake up and check on both of his girlfriends. And as Katsuma's quirk really started working, Izuku found himself breaking down in some tears, as he could see the injuries being repaired. Katsuma, are you sure you've got this? He asked between gasps of exertion as his own power was restoring him. I do, Katsuma said without taking his eyes off of either young heroine. Maharo then speaks up with, I'll take care of him. You need to meet with the others. I think they're trying to decide on a plan. Izuku nods before patting and thanking them both. He has to limp a bit, but he gets to the room his vices were discussing matters. Noting the downed communications and power was out. While Momo had sent out a drone to call for help, it would still take hours to get the message out. That won't do us much good given they still need to get heroes together and send them over, Izuku said while leaning on the door. Shoji hurries over and advised the class president to rest more. I can rest a bit later. We've got to come up with a plan now. Otherwise, we're in more trouble than we thought. Has anyone seen Sahara? Most shook their heads before Mina noted she was going to try a locator spell. She's better at them than me, so she figured she could at least nail down our opponents. I think she went to the highest point on the island to really check. Izuku sighed before noting that they still had to consider who would be best for the fights ahead. 4 of us couldn't beat that beast, Shoto noted while Ojiro seemed to be contemplating something. Maybe I have a way to close the gap. When he said that, all eyes turned to him, while the Shimano siblings quietly arrived and Katsuma started healing Izuku. Ojiro sighed and admitted he had been practicing the technique that John had told him not to. If I can build up a storm of Kai, even a small one, I could at least get closer in power. But what about the risk? Toru asked worriedly. But the tailed teen shook his head and noted it didn't matter. If I don't take this chance, then we could all lose. I can't run away. Jiro also noted that they were losing members fast. Given Kaminari and Momo were both out due to overusing their quirks. And even with the physical boosting you get from Kai, you still aren't fully healthy, Ojiro. Takoyami noted with a nod. Izuku smiled before patting Katsuma on the back. I think he can help a little bit with that. And we know what, or rather who they're after. Izuku's classmates looked to him with some confusion before seeing Katsuma healing the injuries Ojiro had sustained. He finished what my power had made strides on. And I think it might be what the villains are after. Yeah, it is. That one guy said he wanted to steal my quirk, Katsuma says with some fear. A fear matched by Izuku's classmates, as they were reminded of a foe, and the number of quirks he had taken. Mina initially wanted to bring up that they could take Katsuma and run, but Luno stops that. Those guys will come after you. If they went to all this trouble, there's no way they'll give up easily. Shoto then brings up that they could threaten the islanders. Even if Sahara was back, I don't think we can take that risk to teleport him away, Shoto says bluntly. Katsuma then brings up that they could hand him over to the villains. But Izuku shoots down that idea. Your quirk helped me, Ojiro, Ochako, and Melissa. You saved us, and I won't let them take that from you, Izuku said with a smile while kneeling to look Katsuma in the eye, causing said eyes to tear up though. He's right, and we definitely can't let the villains have that power. Melissa says this while coming into the office with Ochako, who kneels down and hugs the little boy before thanking him. Listen, if they get their hands on Katsuma's power, then that man will be near unstoppable, Melissa says before taking off her cracked scanner glasses. She pulls a cord out of a pouch before attaching them to a screen. That showed 9 collapsing after using his quirks. Using his quirks hurts him. They're destroying his body, which is why he needs Katsuma's. Then it's all the more reason we need to stop the villains and save everyone, Ochako says with a determined gaze of her own. Izuku smiles and agrees with his first friend his own age at UA and said they'd stop them all together. The trio's courage and determination, not to mention Ojiro saying he could get himself away to catch up to Chimera, inspires the rest of the teens, and they each stand to say they'll fight together. While Ida goes to talk with the civilians, Melissa stops Izuku and Ochako, guiding them to a room where they could talk confidentially. Kibu, I need to know something. Do you really have true meta powers? Or is there something else? Melissa asked. To prove her point, she used her scanning glasses to show what it had recorded when Izuku first engaged 9. Ochako looked at him with some confusion and asked, Izuku, what aren't you telling us? The green teen gulped, while running through ideas in his head and in Ofa. It might be best to tell them. Though this is kind of your elder when it comes to relationships talking, the voice of Shimura Nana says in his head. Izuku bit his lip before suggesting they get the jaundiced version. We don't have a ton of time after all. Meanwhile, in the center of the island, Sahara was finishing her spell. Got you. 3 at the lighthouse. And the 4th. What? She says before she's blasted in the back by bright nova, collapsing to the ground as the rain falls around them. I know it's a cliché, but it felt like a decent end to the chapter, while also setting up the next fight and removing Sahara from the initial final fight. After all, a genie would be a pretty easy win regardless. I want this to be about the others and how they've changed, including addressing the Ofa situation and how that could help in the final fight. Please review. Damn. I was too comfortable and confident. She snuck up on me and… What the… She's gone. I'm not stupid enough to fight you head on. And I'm also not crazy about letting you go back to tell the rest of those kids where we're hiding. I hear her call out amongst the rain and trees. Great. I didn't finish my spell to keep full tabs on her. Time to get a bit genie tricky. I think aloud before gathering some magic in my hands. I send it outwards in different directions to try and catch whoever this is off guard, only to get hit from a different direction again by a new beam. Nice try, but that leaves you open? I say while flying over quickly to find a mirror in place. Oh shit. I duck quickly as another beam is fired at me from behind, and it would have taken my head off. Though being a genie, I don't have to worry about it as much as most. Still. Clever. You put a few mirrors around to reflect your beams. And with all this noise, you've got plenty of ammo. She's surprised by that and calls out. How did you know I needed noise or sound? You said it, remember? But aside from that, it's not the strangest link between a power and its source, be it quirks or meta abilities. Now then, I just need to look out for that somewhat flashy costume of hers and… Wait, no. She might have changed. Gotta try something else. A few more beam shots were fired in my direction, so I launched some magic in the rough path backwards. But they weren't just to destroy a mirror or similar. Just a few more. I muttered out before dodging another attack. If I can get the right angle to damn. Got you good that time. The villain's voice echoes out through the woods. She got me pretty good. Took a shot in the arm and leg. I'm healed already, but it still hurts. It still works in my favor though. Man, she went nuts on placing those mirrors though. Some are on really weird branches and in odd corners. What? Is she a puzzle or tower gamer or something? I should really challenge John to one of those when he waits. Why am I getting distracted now? And crap. Seriously. How do you keep coming back from these hits? I hear her scream out after I regrew the area in my chest she blasted open. I shake my head before tossing a number of other magic orbs about and around us, finally feeling them all click into place for the finish. As I stand to face my foe, I get blasted once, but again shrug it off. You lost this fight because I'm not just a hero. You face an overseer and mage of exceptional caliber. After all, I'm a genie. With a clap of my hands, I activate the magic I had scattered about the trees and forest while running. The massive spell I had been building linked with each of the circle, and with a flash of light, she and I were engulfed in its effects. Though not without her blasting my way a few more times before she finally noticed the important factor. Namely, that my spell had stopped all sound in the area. I can imagine she may be freaking out, but that gives me time to cast a small tracking spell. Just scanning the top of this hill. There she is, and she's just wandering around now. Dumb idea. Wait, why am I analyzing? Time to catch a lightbender. What? How did she? I thought she was just a quirk user or true meta who could do something similar to what I can or something. At least that's what whoever this is lips are saying. Everybody underestimates the idea that magic exists. Especially in this world. Don't know who you are or why you sided with these people. But I can't let you stop us and hurt anyone else. I cast a few more circles around her, while she wasn't looking before blasting her into place. And the magic takes effect to bind her in place. As I dissipate the magic to talk again, I give her a warning. Those bindings you're wearing aren't physical. They're magic in nature. So blasting them apart won't be that easy. Especially because it's going to be very quiet for you now. Sorry. I say that, but I'm not that sorry. I've learned that you have to be very careful with these kinds of foes. There's no telling what ways her powers could develop. But in the meantime, I've got the villain's location, and I've taken out one more of them. Now Izuku just needs to make something more of a plan. It's going to be a long night. No puff. As Sahara poofed back to the factory with the villain, Izuku was talking with both of his girlfriends on the matter he was keeping secret. So, how did you figure something was off? He asked while looking at Melissa. I wouldn't have thought much of it, but something that villain said seemed off. He scanned us before and didn't think much. But you threw him off. And I caught him saying something about a group of quirks when he scanned you. Not a true meta power or quirkless. Quirks. Ochako looked at Izuku with confusion and asked, Izuku, were you really born quirkless and developed true meta powers? Or have you been lying for some reason? Some reason you couldn't tell us? She had a hurt look on her face, and Izuku winced upon seeing it. He sighed before saying it was complicated. It's true that I was quirkless. But something incredible happened in my last year of middle school. Izuku recounted how he initially met both All Might and John. How the latter had chastised the number one, and then showed Izuku the power of a true meta. Though he wasn't calling himself that at the time. Anyway, my crazy brave actions that day had another effect. One on All Might. Enough to where, he was willing to pass his quirk to me. Dumbfounded silence was what he was met with. Ochako shook her head before saying, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I heard that right. Did you say pass his quirk to you? Melissa queried the same before Izuku gave the pair the short version of the history of the power he partially wielded inside himself. After giving it a moment to sink in, Melissa hummed and noted parts of it did make sense. Mostly how strong you really are now. The few other true metas we've studied have to build up their source or whatever it is. You didn't. Oh, you mean how Izuku lots of raw power right as he started school? Ochako asked with a tilt of her head. Before finishing Melissa's theory that the quirk Ofa acted as an extra battery to amplify his true meta powers and greatly empower the teen. The two were surprised, but Melissa acknowledged the accuracy of her statement. I'm not dumb, and I do listen when you talk, Ochako said with a pout. Melissa and Izuku chuckled before the latter continued. Anyway, there was more to Ofa than just the power-boosting abilities. It turns out that the previous holder's quirks have bonded with it. But I'm the first one it's happened for. Not even Uncle Might had this happen. And he was probably one of the strongest wielders of the power, right? Melissa asked while mentally taking notes. Izuku shook his head and only noted that it had something to do with the quirk reaching a singularity. At least that was what the first user said. Before more questions could be asked, the trio got the alert that Sahara had returned with a captured villain. They made their way out and saw the somewhat hurt genie and the bound villain. Hey, what's with that tag on her? Minta asked while checking out the tag Sahara had quickly made to soundproof the villain. Don't take that off. It's the only thing limiting her power potential, the genie said while catching Minta's hand. He backed away quickly before Izuku and the others arrived. You found them? Ochako asked with some worry. Sahara nodded before noting that they had been hiding out in a lighthouse. But they may have moved by now. Besides, we should take this somewhere else, as well as taking the civilians somewhere else. I agree. Listen, can you handle that? I know you can finish this alone. Heck, if you got really serious, you could probably defeat all of the villains, though you might underestimate them. But this isn't entirely your world. Please, leave this to us. Izuku asked one of his mentors with a firm look on his face. Sahara smiled slightly before nodding and agreeing with the class president. Hey, where's Ojiro? The genie asked while noticing that the tailed teen was nowhere to be seen. That was because he found a quiet place to meditate and pulling upon the power of the earth. Just as the wind and storm flows around the land and sea, so does the energy within the earth. I need to let that flow into me to truly take on that beast of a manager thinks before realizing that he was thinking about it wrong. The villain didn't fully matter in the larger scheme. This fight wasn't the biggest worry to the nature and power of the world. Separate my ego and wish to be strong from what needs to be done. Just take the power in and let it build, the tailed teen thought to himself. He felt the Kai wash into and through him, causing a wind-like circle of energy to form under him. At first he was fine, but he started feeling pain as the storm of Kai was building more and more within his body, eventually screaming out as it felt like he was burning and being electrocuted from within by all the power he tried to absorb and channel. It's too much. How does he handle this? Ojiro asked while trying to maintain the control he had. But he was slipping. Ojiro, he heard call out as he was wincing from the pain. His eyes opened slightly and saw the gloves and boots that Toru wore. He grunted out, Hagakure, stay back. I don't know how to handle all of this. But Toru did the opposite and ran towards Ojiro to hold him. Neither was sure why, and when asked, all Toru said was, I don't know, my body moved on its own. And it thought you needed something else to focus on, I guess. The tailed teen's thoughts were swimming, and he was certain he would fully lose control and hurt her. No, I will handle this, okay. Calm down and wait. That might work for now, he thought before focusing more of the energy into his tail. His thought was that his quirk could be more durable given his training, so he might be able to handle all of the power he was exposed to. And it starts to work. Feels like my tail is on fire, but I think I can hold it. Ojiro trailed off while looking down at Toru, and being able to see her actual face thanks to the Kai swarming around her and him. Cute, he said aloud before blushing with the girl, especially because he can now see other parts of her body too. But he's able to focus his thoughts on maintaining his storm of Kai within his tail and the rest of his body. Finally able to settle what he could for the moment and ask what Toru was there for. Midoriya is building a plan with the others. We need you there. Right. I'll head down and try to maintain my control, Ojiro says with a strained voice. Once inside, he sat down to keep his composure while listening. Izuku brought out a map and showed the ideal area for the fight to come. We'll make Mount Shiroyama and the castle as our base and fight from there. He noted that there was only one way across to it, and they could set up a preemptive strike to split the villains up. Sahara can get most of them to location easily, but I think we should have her take the older and injured off the island, at least until this is done. Momo advises while envisioning where to set up cannons and other weapons. Ida agrees and Sahara is happy to oblige. She then puts forth a way to evacuate everyone if the worst came about. A last-ditch portal. It'll warp everyone away. But I'll need Mina's help in making it. You can count on me, Mina said with a smile and nod. Luno raised his paw and said he'd help as well. Shoto questioned how they would deal with the villain 9, and Izuku said they'd have to keep some distance given he could steal quirks. But that isn't much of a problem for me or Melissa. We can engage him up close. Well, you can. I can't. I've got some other work to do, Melissa said while thinking about her other armors. With that, the preparations get underway, while the villains get ready to attack. Guess she couldn't pull it off after all, Chimera says with a scoff. 9 closes his eyes while Slice arrives and reported that the heroes had set up in the castle. A CJ? No matter. Soon I will be the king of a new reality, 9 says with barely open eyes. As the sun rises, they make their way to Mount Shiroyama. They're coming. Gyro then Shoji report. Izuku nods before calling Momo, Melissa, and Aoyama. The only male of the group starts building up his power to blast, while the 2 MS prepare their own welcomes. Momo having made a few cannons with the lipids she had left, and Melissa having left traps and other devices scattered on the path. Aoyama grunts in pain before unleashing his supernova attack, and then channeling it to the other points on his armor to attack. While Slice and Chimera jump away, 9 just puts up his air wall. Momo then uses her cannons to keep moving the villains away from their leader. With Slice falling underground and Chimera being lost within the trees, and to try and make it easier for her friends, Melissa had launched some quick deploy straitjackets and shock traps, some of which even hit 9. Damn that devolved bitch, he snarls before blasting the ground to disable the traps, only to be set upon by a new attack from Ochako, Sato, and Mainta, her removing the gravity of various boulders and the boys moving them by their own quirks. Oh man, this still hurts, but I can't back down, Sato says while chucking the boulders as fast as he can. Mainta meanwhile was using links of his orbs, and just the orbs themselves to try and slow 9. We don't have a choice, man. We can't let this guy through, he shouts before running to avoid the finger lasers from 9. They kept moving and attacking to make 9 use his quirks and wear him out. Slice cut herself out of the rubble and straitjacket she was trapped in. Splitting us up was clever, but it won't stop us, she said while flipping her hair. No, but we just might, Mina calls out before launching acid to melt the various stalagmites to fall. Slice cartwheels out of the way before launching her hair in Mina's direction. The pink girl doesn't flinch though and quickly puts up a magic barrier. Then the villain is struck from behind by Takoyami and Dark Shadow. Leave this to me, Ashido. The darkness is my domain, Takoyami claims while covering himself in dark shadow, while wearing claws upon his hands. Slice laughs before attacking the raven-headed teen. Darkness is your domain, huh? Well, you don't seem to rule it that well, the redhead says while slashing with her own claws. Takoyami continues to struggle before being knocked to the ground. This is pathetic, she calls out before attempting to stab Takoyami with her hair. The boy doesn't have time to dodge when a new player steps into the ring, that being Luno in a more adult form. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I've got you, he says before blasting back with some hellfire. The villain panics and quickly tries to avoid getting her hair set on fire, then used a bit of her launched hair to break apart the ceiling and disrupt her opponents. Dark Shadow and Luno both struck the falling boulders and then threw a few at Slice. She snarls before saying, "You brats are getting on my nerves. And who's this other hero?" Luno chuckles before saying, "Who said I'm a hero? I'm just here to help out my master." Speaking of it, looks like she's ready, Tilda. Slice looks at him in confusion before feeling a presence behind her. Atop the rocks of the cavern, Mina was standing, but she had a different air about her thanks to tapping into her demon side more. She licked her lips with a smile while looking down at Slice, before appearing in front of the woman before she could react. Slice tried to lash out with her hair, but Mina first dissolved most of it away with her acid, then used magic to stop the woman's claw attacks. It might be true that Takoyami's place is in the dark, Tilda, but I come from a place far more unsettling, Tilda, and I feel like letting it really loose, Mina says before ethereal black wings seemed to appear behind her. Slice's eyes were wide as the dark wings spread out before quickly wrapping around the two of them. When the villain opened her eyes again, she looked around and could only see darkness. "Don't think I'll let you get away, Tilda." Mina's voice seemed to echo around the strange chamber they were in. Slice panicked and tried to cut at anything she thought was moving. But when she did strike home with an attack, it ended up terrifying her. Because what she struck was a more adult and demon-looking Mina, the one from her dreams. The demoness quickly gripped Slice's hands before getting in close and using some charm magic on her. It weakened the villain's resolve as she clenched her legs together. "What are you going to do?" she asked in fear. "Oh, don't worry, Tilda. I'll make sure you enjoy this just as much, Tilda, Tilda, Tilda," the demon said before kissing Slice to make her crumple, leaving her further at the mercy of the demon's embrace. In the forest by a waterfall, Chimera was ripping out of the straitjacket and traps used to bind him. "That freaking soulless bitch. Pulling this shit," he shouted after finally freeing himself from the bindings, only to get dragged underwater and frozen by the teamwork of Shoto and Froppy. Ida and Kirishima were happy that they caught him, but Shoto knew better. "He's coming," he called out as the ice broke apart and Chimera burst up from the water. He popped his neck before taking out another cigar and lighting it with his flame breath, and warning the teens he was serious about the fight to come. But they weren't backing down either. "Recipro turbo," Ida calls out before going in with a powerful set of kicks. Not one of them fazed the villain. As Kirishima runs in to put his own punches out, all Chimera says is that it tickled whenever the hard head attacked. Todoroki then uses a fire blast, but Chimera just uses wind pressure from his movements to knock the attack away. "You don't get it. It's you, Squawk." What's happening?" Chimera asks as he feels his limbs seize up. "You can thank me for that," Tsuyu says with a ribbit. Todoroki explained that their attacks were intentional, as they coated their limbs in a toxin she had created. The four were certain they had their foe and were ready to take him down. But it wasn't enough. Chimera started to bulk up in rage and transformed into a new state they could only compare with Jirota from Class 2B. Not good. He was dangerous enough when he was smaller, Todoroki says while trying to think of some kind of plan, only for the villain to unleash an even more powerful fire beam blast at the teens. Todoroki used his ice to make a shield, but the attack broke through. "We need to get clear," Ida called out before grabbing Shoto. "Duck down, cyclone shot," a new voice calls out. The students do that and see a large wind funnel-like attack above their heads, one that stops the beam in its tracks. Once Chimera let up, he was stunned and furious at the sight before him. "That stupid, weak little brat," he said. Ojiro was standing tall from a distance away from the fight. His muscles were tensing and aching, but he was holding his ground and ready for the fight. "Time for round 2, he said before sprinting forward to attack the beast. He leapt up and used his empowered tail to knock Chimera back into the waterfall. Asterisk cough, hack asterisk what the hell? Where did all of that come from? The older heteromorph asked as he glared at Ojiro. The boy didn't answer before taking his stance once more. "You guys, get out of here. I'll handle this. Midoriya and the others need help," Ojiro says, both because it was true and to infuriate his enemy. Shoto wanted to disagree, but he also knew that they all could use the help. "Ida, take Asui and Kirishima. I'll back Ojiro up if needed," Todoroki said as the tailed teen clashed with his monstrous foe. "Are you sure?" Ida asked before seeing the look of determination in the bi-colored teen's eyes. He gave an affirmative before taking off with the two in question. Chimera swipes at Ojiro, who easily dodges and uses his powered-up flare shots. Flame waves. The trio of Kai attacks didn't travel along the ground, but they were large enough to graze it. The villain grunted with each impact before shouting, "How? How could you get this strong? Your quirk isn't anything special, and you aren't a true meta." Ojiro smiled a bit before using a burning hurricane powered-up flame tail dance to knock his opponent around a bit. Have you never considered that there is more to power than quirks or other meta abilities? That a person could grow strong without a flashy or strong quirk, just by virtue of their training and practice. Like hell they can. This world should belong to the strong and the strong alone. I was called and treated like a monster my entire life. All of us were. Because we had quirks that were so powerful everyone feared us. This strikes a chord with the two heroes listening. For Todoroki, it reminded him of his father in a way, wanting to be the strongest and acknowledged for it. This man is similar in the wanting to be acknowledged, but his is out of revenge for how others have treated him, Shoto thinks while looking down at his left hand. The martial artist, those saw more of what Chimera and the rest were likely all about. They want the satisfaction of standing above others after they were told their powers were a menace, or they were monsters. This revenge is little more than a reason to oppress others and spread a different bigotry. Ojiro took a breath before shifting his stance and closing his eyes. This just infuriated Chimera more, and he lunged at Ojiro. But the boy dodged the attacks and waited for his moment to strike home with some devastating blows of his own. From his grenade palms and blaze heel drop, he rattles the villain more. But all of that just infuriates him, and he roars before trying to blast Ojiro with his flame beam. The tailed teen grits his teeth before using his cyclone shot to intercept again. There's one problem. Ojiro could feel his attack being overwhelmed by chimeras. Keep him there, Todoroki calls out before using his ice to hold both in place. Chimera snarls as he knows he can't let up his attack to break the ice. So he ups the intensity of his mouth beam. Ojiro grunts in exertion while trying to draw on as much strength as he can. This wouldn't stop them. Not Midoriya, not Kendo, and not Svoboda. No, I won't buckle here. I am a proud fighter. The tailed teen thinks before shifting his hands and putting more of his kai into the attack. The young hero can feel all of his muscles and bones screaming as his eyes light up with kai. Plus Ultra, Inferno Typhoon Rage, Ojiro shouts out as what looked like a cyclone changed into a spiraling beam of kai, overpowering Chimera's attack and knocking the villain out. Unfortunately, it knocked me out too. Little help? Ojiro asked as he collapsed next to Todoroki, who was glad to oblige, but couldn't help but chuckle a bit. Seems you learned a bit too much from John, he said as they walked away from the battlefield. And a large chunk of the waterfall was destroyed by the blast. I hope the others are doing okay. But we're running out of people, Shoto thinks while helping Ojiro back. Okay, after the latest chapter, now I really have to make all kinds of gear for Melissa's armors. If All Might can have that, then so should she. And hopefully this fulfilled some of where else she could go from here with her gear and armor. This was also a way I felt to make the changes to a few others from What'if feel impressive. Giving Ojiro his shot at really taking down that powerhouse chimera. And yes, I know I did a whole beam struggle to finish, but come on. You can't tell me it wouldn't be awesome to see. Let alone it being like a Gohan versus Nappa type of situation. With the mouth beam and the training Ojiro has endured. I'll probably have the finale up not long after this, because I tried to write them both together. But that ended up being way too long. So the 9 fight is next chapter. Please review. While the fights with his subordinates were happening, 9 was still almost lazily working his way up the mountain, even as the heroes kept attacking. We aren't slowing him down, Sato reported while throwing more rocks. Ochako tries dropping all of the stones she had raised up through the run through the mountain, even making herself sick. But that still isn't enough to faze their foe, as he uses air wall and finger beams to keep blasting the rocks away. The two are knocked away by 9's surge of attacks, with Ochako losing her helmet. Sato shakes out of the pain and eats a molasses cookie to make his muscles svelte and speedy. He rushes to grab the gravity girl and move them to a new trap Minta had set up. All set? Yeah, good to go. Ochako shook her head before running over and lifting up the braces holding Rocky Avalanche back. And then being saved by Sato again. 9 uses his beams to try and cut through the wave of stone. But it isn't enough, and his air wall is covered. "Ready, Minta?" Sato calls out before tossing the short teen into the air. "My head is going to be bleeding for a while, but I'll put out plus ultra style to stop this guy. Super grape rush." Minta shouts before ripping more and more of the orbs out of his head and throwing them into the wave, making some of the boulders stick together and hold in place. Minta celebrates with pride upon seeing the small mountain of stuck-together rocks, as do Ochako and Sato. But that is nowhere near enough to stop the villain. He used his air wall to knock his burial away and then blast at the trio of heroes. "Is that all?" he questioned in a bored manner, before blocking a shot from Aoyama to his back. But he and Momo, who was helping him, were knocked away as well. The other 3, though, refused to back down. So 9 prepares to finish the teens, only to be set upon by Melissa, who flew in with her overwhelming firepower armor, blasting 9 with as much ammo as she could unload, frustrating the villain as he was certain she wouldn't be in his way. But that wasn't the only armor that attacked him. From behind again, he was blasted by an extra of her base armor. And when he tried to attack back, the Guardian armor stepped in and stopped his beams and shockwaves. "Get the kids out of here," Izuku said before leaping in himself. "We can't back down now," he thought while letting his power run through his body. He runs in with a strong St. Louis smash to try and knock the villain back. And it partially works. But the air wall still holds and Izuku is sent up into the air. But that is when both Melissa and Ochako fly up to throw him towards their foe again. "Give it all you've got, Kibu," they both shout as they rotate and launch him. The shockwave of the attack does send their classmates back, but it also knocks 9 to his back and the ground. "Damn you. You're stronger than I thought." "Well, 2 of you are," he says with a look of disdain towards Melissa in her armor. 9 takes some shots to disable the heroes once again. But they keep out of his range somewhat and Melissa moves in to shoot the villain with her weapons and armors, with Guardian getting in front of her to stop the finger lasers, and her improved base armor would fire its own attacks. Then Izuku would leap in and attack with his kicks and Delaware Air Force smash attacks, even pulling out a new one, Chicago Air Force smash, where he chopped to create a pair of wind blade-like attacks. These all still frustrated, but didn't fully hurt 9. And he lashed out again to damage Melissa's armor and destroy her other improved base suit. Just as he was taking aim at the girl he viewed as a waste, Sato rushed in under his barrier. "I may be big and not the brightest, but even I can see openings," he shouts before gut-punching the villain, who is infuriated at this and uses his snakes to knock him away. "Sato," Izuku cried out, while recovering from his attack being reflected back on him. Ochako then tries to make her enemy float, but snakes are unleashed again. But she is saved by someone she thought was out for the count. Minta leapt in and pushed her out of the way, only to be chewed up by the monstrous serpent himself. "Damn," Melissa cried out as Izuku caught Ochako, and she sent Guardian to break Minta free. The boy was pretty beat up, so she sent the armor away to keep him safe. She and Izuku used all they had to blast back, but the snakes separated and lashed out to knock them into the side of the cliff. Izuku stood his ground, but Melissa's systems were telling her there was too much damage to the armor. Before they could catch their breath, 9 unleashed his 2 snakes at them to try and finish this. But then 9 started spasming as he couldn't handle using his quirks again. But that just increased his resolve to get to the children. Even as Izuku attacked, he could still block with air wall. "I wish I didn't have to hold back," 9 announces as life support system started injecting him with more medication. Right as he knocked Izuku away, he used his weather manipulation to call down a massive lightning strike on Izuku and Melissa as they were recovering, not noticing that Ochako had taken her own stand and used the jets from Melissa's armors and her weightlessness to rapidly move in and get them clear. 9 wasn't worried about that. He focused on only getting to the children as Shoji and Ojiro tried to slow him down. But their efforts were not successful, as they were hit by multiple attacks from 9's various quirks. Ojiro was the last one standing until Ida and the others arrived. "Asui, get the children out of here," Ida called out before trying to keep 9 busy. "Get out of my way," 9 shouted while blasting Kirishima, Ida, and Ojiro away. With the heroes gone, the villain stalked over to the children. Maharu tried to protect her brother, but all it did was leave her open to getting grabbed by him. While Katsuma cried out for his sister, 9 gave him an ultimatum. "Unless you want your sister to die right now, you'll get over here," 9 demands and wants to make his desires become real. But that's not happening today. "Houston smash," Izuku called out as he kicked 9 in the face as hard as he could. This sends both 9 and Maharu flying, but the girls catch Maharu no problem. "You were about to run to try and save her, weren't you? Good job. But now you two need to run away from here," Izuku says while keeping his eyes focused on where 9 landed. As the man comes out of the smoke, the trio of heroes take their stances to attack. Izuku rushes in first with a kick. Melissa expands a shield on her arm, and Ochako uses her grapples to pull some heavy objects to use as flails. "How?" 9 demands as he blocks their attacks. Ochako smiles and says, "We saw you use that before when you were desperate. And we knew you'd try it when pushed enough." She gets inside his barrier and manages to get some good kicks to 9's knees. Before throwing him to the ground, the villain uses a light pulse from air wall to right himself before charging up his beams. Izuku tries something new and mixes some extra energy into his air force attacks. This causes a somewhat kinetic explosion upon impact with the beams. When the Hydra snakes were unleashed, both Melissa and Ochako moved in to attack those. Ochako used the weight of the objects she picked up to crush one head and Melissa, unloading as much firepower as she could into the heads of the creatures, until they were all close enough to unleash as strong of attacks as they could. Melissa with a full barrage from all of her guns and other points. Ochako threw in the heaviest objects she could find, and Izuku built up energy in his arm for a strong Texas smash attack. The combined impacts left their mark on 9 as he was falling back in pain, as well as the problem of his quirks affecting his body. "This isn't over," he wheezed out before building a strong storm above them to attack again. As it builds, 9's resolve and anger harden as a new wind swirls from around him. "Oh, come on, what's it going to take?" Izuku asked in frustration. Ochako looked back and told the Shimano siblings that they needed to get further away. "Kibu, what do we do?" she asked while 9's hair was swirling above him. And it is compounded as he forms a burning tornado around him from his quirk and the leftover effects of the teen's attacks. "He's growing more unstable and more powerful. I don't know if my gear would be enough for this," Melissa reported while looking at the readouts on her screen. Izuku grips his fist tight before calling out on comms to Koda. "Activate the last resort. Get everyone out quickly. I don't know what else might happen, but I'm not letting the civilians get hurt." The quiet team gives an affirmative and escorts everyone to the escape circle. "That's a temporary measure, Kibu. This guy isn't stopping soon, and I don't think we'll get help in enough time," Ochako says while trying to stand her ground. Izuku tries to build up his power to attack at 100%. "That's not going to be enough, kid." Izuku freezes up, and suddenly his mind is taken to the vestige world of Ofa. There he sees Shinomori Hikage. "Even without fully being there, I know you need more than just yourself and your kinetic abilities. It'll take more. Something only you may be able to do. Because you possess both the experience of Ofa and the potential of a true meta." Before Izuku could process this, the winds from the tornado blew all 3 of the heroes back as they crumpled. "You don't have the strength to defeat me," Nine claims as he walks towards the three, claiming that only his ideal society would be just. One where the strong lord over the weak. Yeah, and where does that leave someone like me? Someone who gave you a fight, but wasn't born with power. Melissa demanded before she was shot by the Nine's beams. What do you think, animal? You would be called. Just as all of you who were not born with power should have been. That infuriated Izuku, and he was about ready to leap in and attack Nine for saying that. Both about Melissa and by extension him. It was a lesson for me and you. Remember not to go off half-cocked. I did, and look where I ended up. If someone pushes you or insults you, you can't rush at them. It'll just leave you open. Izuku remembered John saying this after he'd been depowered. He let his anger rule him that day, and it almost cost him. As angry as I am, now isn't the right time. Izuku thinks while trying to avoid more of the beam shots, only for all of them to be grabbed by the Hydra heads of Nine. Power will be the only thing that matters. That is how a superhuman society should be structured. Nine claims, and while both Ochako and Izuku were furious, Melissa was laughing at him. Wow. Not only is this just the ravings of a power-hungry fool, but it's so pathetically pointless in your case. Nine snarls before slamming Melissa into the ground. What right does an ant like you have to say anything? He claimed while charging up a beam, only to be struck from behind by an attack from Izuku. You know she's right. You can't handle your power. Your body breaks down each time you use it. It doesn't matter that you were born with strength, because that strength is completely meaningless. Ochako shouts out while bleeding from her head. She even mentions that it would destroy the world even faster and end everyone. Because we'd all be born truly weak, just like you. This infuriates the villain, and he slams them both to the ground before trying to claim he was strong again. You're wrong. Mr. Kibu, Miss Takemite, and Miss Uravity are really strong, Katsuma yells out while helping to heal Shoji and Jiro. He's right. They don't fight for themselves like you do. They fought for all of us. Maharo shouts out with tears in her eyes. Nine ignores all of this and starts stalking over to the children again. While he was, Izuku sat up and thought more about what the fourth user had said to him. Until he lands on a new thought and plan. Ochako, Melissa, I've got a crazy idea, if you're willing to believe in me. Izuku says while his kinetic healing was repairing bones. Yes, that was intentional. I was just illustrating how many times Izuku's broken something in this fight alone. Izuku, what are you? Ochako started until she saw her boyfriend bite his lip. He then pulled her to him and kissed her. While confused at the whole matter, she suddenly felt a powerful surge within her. Melissa was confused until Izuku kissed her as well, and she felt the same rush. They then caused a burst of energy from where they were laying. One that rattled Nine. Will you still be able to use that? Ochako asked as she took a stand with Izuku. Even without the wellspring of that, I'm still plenty strong. And now, so are both of you. As the girls took a stand on either side of Izuku, he mentioned to them to feel the energy all throughout their bodies and not to let it explode. Looks like it wasn't just that energy that was transferred, he said while putting himself between Nine and the kids. Yeah, I can feel it. Any broken bones are healing. Melissa grunted out as her ribs were putting themselves back together with kinetic healing. Nine demanded to know what was happening as the three channeled the power throughout their bodies. Red lines glowing on each of them. Izuku resolved to use his full power as his hair spiked back and lit up like back when he fought John in the festival. For Melissa, it took on a different state, increasing her muscle mass to a moderate degree. Not up to all might, but enough to be noticeable. Ochako, meanwhile, was somewhere in between. With a bit more muscle, and her hair seemed to float like she removed the gravity around it. You two ready? Izuku asked while focusing on his breath. Melissa and Ochako gave him an affirmative while gripping their fists tight. Triple Ofa full cowling. They all thought as they faced down with 9 once more, who snarls, calls them weak, and creates another fire tornado. Izuku builds up the energy in both his fists and arms. Melissa, to his right, builds up the power how she can envision it in her left. And Ochako built up the strength in her right. This is what Uncle Might entrusted to Izuku, Melissa thought, while Ochako saw something else. This is the power Izuku trusted both of us with 9 tries to bring down the largest mass of clouds and storm he can on the trio. Detroit, smash! They all scream out, and they punch skyward. The force of their blows completely dissipating the storm 9 spent all that time building, clearing part of the skies, even as their arms were crying out in pain. 9 was shocked that they had managed to disrupt the quirk he thought made him a god. And even with their arms bruised and battered, the 3 heroes stood tall. "I won't let you stand in my way," he shouted as he powered up more to try and take them out. As the kinetic healing started patching them up again, they all opened their eyes and focused intently on 9. They all rushed forward as fast as they could, each using what they had to finish the fight with the villain. Ochako now could throw the boulders. She removed the gravity from with insane force, causing shockwaves as they went by the villain. But these were just a distraction as she rushed in to try and take out 9 first. Izuku, meanwhile, was flying all over and unleashing ranged attacks like his Air Force smashes, and picking up or catching some of the stone Ochako had thrown with his tendrils and black whips, coming in right after Ochako to try and kick 9 in the chest. Melissa, meanwhile, took more inspiration from All Might and stuck to the ground while attacking, even using a New Hampshire smash of her own to propel herself toward their foe, and then copying Izuku's shoot style for a good kick. The villain keeps attacking with all he had, firing beam after beam and unleashing as many serpents as he could to take out the heroes. But they all evade his attacks, and he is blasted off the island by a strong punch to the stomach from Melissa. He can vaguely make out her saying, "Detroit smash," amidst the cacophony they were all creating. And she is suddenly above him for another attack, flipping and spinning around before unleashing a California smash to 9's face. He does block with air wall, but it's imperfect, and she breaks through, while also sending the villain towards Ochako, who picked up a few trees before Comet home, running the villain further down the mountain, as well as raising a larger amount of stone than she could ever handle before, and sending it all down onto 9. The villain seems to crumple more under the weight of the blows and power displayed, only to be shocked when he sees a mass of what looked lava waiting for him as he was moving downward. Izuku had gotten ahead and heated up a huge area with his kinetic powers at their max. 9 was forced to use his air wall to keep from landing in the molten rock, only to be kicked hard in the side by Izuku, and then blasted around by a barrage of Delaware smashes. The villain rights himself before trying to attack once more, but the 3 Ofa users won't let him. "You sure about this, Izuku?" Ochako asked on last time as he stood in their hands after his attack. "Yeah, put everything you have into this," he says while feeling the energy from all of his movements seeming to build in him for this last hit. Melissa nods to Ochako as they throw Izuku with all their might, the boy turning into an almost blue-green sentient flash of light or bolt of lightning. 9 puts up the strongest barrier he could to stop the heroes, but it was nothing compared to the power they had let out, and 9 was knocked around again and again by the shockwaves, and even the static electricity Izuku was letting off as he moved. Before he could be blasted away from the island, 9 tried to right himself by channeling funnels of air under his feet. The girls caught up with Izuku, and they all charged at 9 again. Melissa built up her rotation and energy to do another California smash, one that shattered most of 9's face and cracked most of his cranium. Izuku built up everything he had into his leg before unleashing a powerful St. Louis smash into 9's upper torso, and Ochako kept it simple with her own Detroit smash aimed at the lower torso, but still put her all into the attack. 9 was sent barreling into the ocean, his consciousness having long left him from all of the blows and pain. But with the teens, each dealing with the recoil of putting everything out to stop him and save all of the people on the island. Man, maybe I should have stepped in. Izuku vaguely heard this as he suddenly felt himself floating without trying. Sahara was there, and she created copies of herself to catch them all. Izuku groaned before asking if everyone was safe. Yeah, I've actually started returning a number of them. So just rest up. We can take care of the rest, the genie said before creating bandages to patch them all up. That we involved a few specific heroes that Sahara had gotten in touch with while evacuating people. The lead of whom was All Might, who checked in with her and rushed to Izuku, and the others aid upon arriving in light form. With the other students, each was recovering in various ways. For Takoyami, he'd been knocked out by the falling stones while Luno watched over him. Mina, though, well, let's just say she was dealing with an awkward after effect of her fully tapping into being a demon. That being Slice or Hisaki Kuruka, who seemed obsessed with her. Hearts in her eyes and everything. Should have thought that through a bit more. Let alone what that side of me attached to my waist. Mina groaned out while Kuruka was holding on to her leg and rubbing her face on it like a cat or dog. Ojiro, meanwhile, had somewhat recovered during the final fight and went back to check on his opponent. He sighed while thinking about the man. He was strong and looked terrifying, so most shunned him out of fear. That made him into something of a true monster. But he never believed a person could just become strong. Never looked deeper than the surface. The tailed teen used a seal Sahara had given him to make sure his opponent couldn't attack again, while feeling slightly guilty about the whole matter, resolving to try and teach others how to use what he'd learned, and maybe truly master that technique. It could save a lot of lives if used properly. Ojiro thought aloud. As other heroes and authorities started arriving, the villains were loaded into maidens to take them away. Make sure you're careful with those two. One was already in prison once after the Island incident, Todoroki said while looking at Blackout, whose eyes flashed red as if to say he'll get out again. Back with those who defeated 9, Izuku had begun to wake up first, feeling the power of his kinetic healing working faster than usual. Ochako? Melissa? Are they okay? Was the first thing he asked. Toshinori smiled before saying, They're fine, young Midoriya. Sahara said they're healing quite nicely. Seems you did something extreme to finish this fight. Izuku looked down and admitted to sharing Ofa and his other powers somehow with his girlfriends. I don't know how I did it, or why it worked, but it was all I could think of to stop him. Wait, the villain. Where is he? Izuku started to sit up, but both Sahara and Toshinori pushed him down gently. Not the time to worry about that, Izuku. You need to rest. Doctor's orders, Sahara said with finality. Melissa groaned before muttering out. Pretty sure you're not that *cough* kind of doctor, Sahara. Izuku tried to turn over and crawl to her, but he was stopped again. I know you get strength from kinetic energy, but you really should stop for a while. Toshinori said this before helping to set Izuku next to Ochako and Melissa. He told them all to get some rest, but couldn't help but smile when he saw them take each other's hands as they started to sleep some more. I'm not sure how, but you created a new miracle with Ofa. No, it's more accurate that Ofa believed in the strength of all of their hearts, as did those who came before, and it believed that the best one to hold on to the power was young Midoriya. Thank you, Master. The old hero thinks this as some tears fill his eyes, and he thinks about how proud he is of all of his students and his niece. Sahara elbows him before reminding Toshinori that others needed help, as heroes from all across the country came to lend their aid in helping the people of Nabu and the heroes of 2A. Some wondered what the point to all of these events could be. While 9 was crawling up from the sea to try and keep fighting, Shigaraki arrived to deal with the matter. You failed. But you did pretty well, all things considered. Now I think it's time you sleep. Or rather, your quirk sleeps. Until the time comes for it to be used. The love leader kneels down before injecting 9 with something, and then using a portal Namu to take them both to Garaki. After all of that had happened, the commission wanted to call End Class 2A's project. But all of the teens stayed to help rebuild after the battle. Even Luno helped out after some looks from Mina. But there was a different problem. Katsuma and Maharo's father was still unaccounted for. All Blackout would say is that he'd taken the man to an associate in the north. I'd like to go looking for him, to help put the kids' minds at ease. But, you know we're needed here, right? Ochako finished Izuku thought, while they were moving rubble after getting patched up. He nodded while wondering if there was someone else who would finish the job for them. Up in the Soya prefecture. In the Rishiri subprefecture, a man was talking with his subordinates. I still can't believe that Jerk had the nerve to pass off some random guy to keep a mission a secret. A man who was wearing a number of colors said while rolling his neck. Oh, let it go, Chroma. He was pretty helpful in cementing our hold in these areas. Well, him and the boss. A large woman said while picking up a few heavy objects and using them like dumbbells. Chroma rolls his eyes before asking, Okay, Amp, why do you trust the boss so much? Not like he's done that much. Just kind of. Chroma's words trailed off as he felt an unsettling presence behind him. He turned back and saw nothing, and did it twice more and nothing was there. Guess I'm just Bane, he screams out after seeing something appearing before him. The glowing red eyes and shimmering white hair of his boss, Revenant. We won't be staying much longer. It's time we branch out to other areas. Time for us to spread our business elsewhere, the young man announces before looking to a map of the region and tapping on the small area of Sarafutsu, Japan. As much as I wanted to put this all in one chapter, with all that happened within it, I felt a two-parter was better. Aside from giving Melissa her real chance to shine against that psychosocial Darwinist, I also wanted Ochako to do more than just being saved by Izuku. So, I knew I wanted to have her getting her own shot at saving the day with him. Also, I took some minor inspiration from some fan art of Ochako with Ofa for her state. But I thought adding in something from Melisol Might's forms would be some good balance. But the next big part will be my custom short arc of Class 2B and their work in a different region and against a different group of foes, with parts of it linking back to this incident as well. Please review.